Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the second hearing of the Assembly Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education in California. And before we get started, I wanted to welcome up President Papazian from San Jose State. Thank you so much for hosting us today. I want to invite you to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Appreciate it very much. And on behalf of our campus community, it is an honor and pleasure to welcome you, the Commission, and all of our members here today. And it is fitting that a legislative hearing focused on California's higher education master plan would be held on the campus where the California State University was founded 160 years ago. That's okay, you can cheer. I mean, it's all good, right? Having evolved from the state's founding normal school for teacher training to a vibrant metropolitan university supplying much of the talent fueling the world's epicenter of innovation, San Jose State, California's first public university, is a worthy backdrop for this conversation. Now, I'm a proud product and beneficiary of California's long-envied public higher education system. I followed my parents to UCLA, earning undergraduate and graduate degrees in English literature before launching my academic career. Of course, several members of this select committee, including 2 members of the South Bay delegation, also are products of this system. Assemblymember Lowe, a proud Spartan, earned his political science degree here. And Assemblymember Kalra is a graduate of the University of California. Each has taught here. My point is, this committee's membership brings valuable personal perspective to this very important topic. And the focus of today's hearing, the relevance of a higher education master plan conceived nearly 70 years ago to the workforce needs of a contemporary, constantly evolving economy, is an especially apt topic to take up at Silicon Valley's only public university. When the master plan was commissioned, San Jose State was a state college, serving just over 13,000 students in a city of 204,000, less than 4% of whom were persons of color. Today, we are a vibrant metropolitan university serving 35,000 students in America's 10th largest city. We also are one of this nation's most diverse public universities. And among our city's more than 1 million residents, well over half are persons of color. Last year, the aggregate number of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees conferred by our campus was close to our total enrollment in 1960. Now, many campuses across the state have similar stories. In the meantime, this valley, as we all know, has been transformed into a living laboratory of relentless innovation and ever-accelerating change. And it has not simply been a binary shift from agriculture to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The very nature of work, influenced by technology, but also encompassing myriad other factors, has shifted beneath our feet. As I have repeatedly said since arriving here nearly a year and a half ago, we are at a critical inflection point. And it is against this backdrop that a thoughtful examination of our master plan for higher education not only is worthwhile, it is essential. So, since I am a scholar at heart, I hope you will indulge me in a few rhetorical questions to start your day. And I'll limit myself to just 3. I could go on for a long time, but I'll limit myself. The original master plan established firm segmental boundaries that may have made sense in their time. These lines, defining each segment's role in fulfilling the triad mission of teaching, research, and public service, long have been blurred. For example, comprehensive universities like ours, long serving as undergraduate and master's degree granting institutions, today offer subject-specific doctoral programs. All of our universities engage in meaningful research, teaching, community and public service, and educate both undergraduate and graduate students for a democracy. At the same time, the role of our community colleges has never been more critical than it is today, in ensuring affordable access to higher education for all Californians at a time when education beyond high school is more critical than ever for the long-term health and well-being of individuals and communities. So first, do these firm distinctions, including eligibility standards for admission to our four-year degree-granting systems, still make sense in the ways that served us so well these past 60 years? Or do they need to be adjusted to reflect the changing needs of a 21st century economy? Second, are we thinking sufficiently about the role of our private, independent institutions in the contemporary higher education landscape? And third, do the core assumptions that informed the master plan's creation nearly 60 years ago enhance or inhibit the potential of today's students and campuses to fulfill their promise? There are many other questions to ask and issues to consider. We know you are approaching your work thoughtfully and methodically, as you should. So as you begin today's hearing, please know that we are here to collaborate with and support you. And again, welcome to San Jose State.
Thank you, President Papazian, for that great welcome, and also for highlighting some of the core questions that we'll be asking over the next 2 years or longer. As I mentioned earlier, this is the second hearing of the Assembly Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education in California. And I want to thank all of you for attending, and also to those of you who are watching us online through the live stream. I would especially like to thank President Papazian and San Jose State University for hosting this hearing. In 1960, our state developed a visionary plan for the future of higher education, known as the Master Plan. However, much has changed in California during the ensuing decades. Population growth, increased diversity, a change in leading industries and their need for talent, as well as in the field of education itself. My goal for this select committee is to hold hearings throughout the state to conduct a thorough legislative review to ensure that California has a master plan for today and for the future, and to again promise California students an accessible, affordable, high-quality public higher education. The Select Committee is the first step in a multi-year endeavor that could last up to 6 or 8 years or longer. I'm coming in with an open mind and don't have any preconceived notions or solutions, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same, and I know they all are. I view the first 2 years of the Select Committee as being the information gathering phase, where we hear from stakeholders and collect feedback. The Select Committee recently held its first hearing on August 31st in Sacramento, where we heard an overview and status of higher education from the Legislative Analyst's Office, as well as from the leaders of California's higher education institutions, specifically the community colleges, CSU, UC, and the Association of Nonprofit Private Institutions. In addition to today's hearings, we plan to hold 3 hearings throughout the state, including in Southern California, the Central Valley, and back in Sacramento. The following 3 hearings will continue to be issue-focused and examine subjects surrounding the needs of faculty and staff, of students, and cost and funding issues, including financial aid. After the conclusion of the hearings, the Select Committee will issue a report, likely at the end of next year, summarizing the hearings as well as recommending the next steps, such as what issues need to be focused on in more depth. Today's hearing is focusing on California's workforce needs and will consist of 3 panels. The first panel will examine what are California's workforce needs, and in this panel we will hear from higher education experts from the Public Policy Institute of California and from California Competes. The second panel will provide perspectives from various industries in the business community as represented by IBM, Kaiser Permanente, and the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. The third panel will discuss how private and nonprofit entities are partnering with public building, or in the local Building and Construction Trades Council of California. And there will also be an opportunity for public comment, and we have a sign-up sheets for folks who would like to speak. And where is the sign-up sheet? At the front, oh, right in the front. Louis Maroney, my field representative, is waving it. The Select Committee has a membership appointed on a bipartisan basis, and we are very fortunate to have members who have a strong background and interest in higher education. And with that, I want to welcome my colleagues. And before I turn it over to my colleagues on the Select Committee, I want to bring up and introduce our Assembly member who represents San Jose State, my colleague and friend, Oz Palra, to say a few words before I know he's got to run off to the rest of his day. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member Berman. In about 15 minutes, we're starting the Select Committee hearing on the status of boys and men in color, which is, of course, very much related to the work that you're going to be doing, certainly over the next couple of years and in the years to come. And it's my honor to welcome all of you, to host all of you, particularly my colleagues, including our other neighbor, Assemblymember Evan Lowe. And when we think about the master plan from 1960, when you have a couple of millennials like Assemblymember Marc Berman and Evan Lowe, we definitely, I think it's a great opportunity now for us to think about what we need to be doing going forward. Of course, our other colleagues, including Chair of our Higher Education Committee, Jose Medina, and Assemblymember Susan Eggman, who are equally committed to this work. And I'm just very grateful that you're having this hearing here at San Jose State. Dr. Papazian has been a phenomenal leader in the short time she's been here. I believe she's one of the finest leaders in education in the state. And I'm very excited about the opportunities and what we see happening here at San Jose State University. But as a product of our community college system, the University of California system, and someone who taught here at San Jose State University, I believe strongly in California's higher education system. And I'm just grateful to Assemblymember Marc Berman for immediately stepping in as a freshman and taking on this monumental challenge. I can't think of anyone else that I would rather have taking on this challenge. I am confident in him. I'm confident in the rest of the committee members, and I'm very excited about working with all of them and learning from all of you. So once again, welcome, and thank you for doing this important work.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Colorado. And let me just say, I mean, how grateful I am to be joined by my colleagues. I know the request for our time that we all have, and so to be joined by colleagues from Riverside, from Stockton, and from Campbell means a great deal to me. So I want to turn it over if you have any opening comments you'd like to make. Sure.
I want to thank our chair. Am I on?
Yeah.
I want to thank our chair, Assemblymember Berman, for hosting and bringing us together for this second hearing of the Select Committee on the master plan. Very important work. I want to thank President Papazian for having us here again. It was not that long ago that the Committee on Higher Education was here to talk about diversity of faculty. So I have to remind everyone about my own roots here in San Jose. Born here when my father graduated in 1953 from San Jose State with a degree in civil engineering. And I bring that up not only to talk about my father, but as we talk about higher education and the changing demography of our population of the state of California. At the same time that I'm aware that many of our students are first generation, I think it's also important to note that Latinos are not new in higher education, that Latinos, obviously with a long history in this state, have the long presence in higher education. So I bring that up again as well for that reason. We know that California has changed quite a bit since 1960. As I said, the population's changed, the needs of the state have changed, and so also must education change. But I think as we look forward to discussion, we need to look to make sure that we have not only access to higher education, but also accountability, equity, success, completion is something that we very much care about, and affordability, making sure that education is not out of reach for many of our students. So look forward to the hearing today. Look forward to hearing all the wisdom and that the panels will bring. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming and being interested in this important topic. Thank you to the chair, to the president, and to my fellow members who are here. So I am a proud faculty member on leave from Sacramento State in case this gig doesn't work out for me. I renew my leave every year to have a fallback plan. But I am one of those first-generation Latino California educated students who then found my way to become a tenured faculty member. And I'm also very aware that I represent the most underserved region in the state for public higher education, the state around the area of Stockton. When the president talked about the tractors in Silicon Valley, people in my district talk about being the last one. There's a lot of ones who claim that title. I was the last one that drove the tractor in Silicon Valley and drove it over the San Joaquin Valley. So I don't want to say short, but I commuted this morning, and I know a lot of my constituents commute over to the Silicon Valley every day. And we have a lot of, our housing is more affordable, our land is more abundant, but our resources are still shrinking. So I will not allow a higher education conversation to take place without me trying to be on the table and say this is the first university built, and I would like to see the next one built in the city of Stockton. And to kind of, when we talk about success and we talk about equity and we talk about opportunity and we look at the regions in the state that are growing and the regions that are diverse and the regions that have the potential to really, I think, capitalize on the resources we have with maybe a more technology, maybe the Cal Poly Stockton, I'm open to that. Anyway, I'm excited to be part of this conversation and committed to this as we go forward. And I see some CFA folks over there. Welcome to you also. And I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, and good morning. There you go. Thank you very much, and good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Thank you very much to our President Papazian here at San Jose State University, and certainly a plug out to my own President Nguyen and Chancellor Minor from Foothill De Anza, as well as a proud graduate. I want to make mention in particular when Assemblymember Berman was elected, he had asked about some guidance and advice from those more senior to him in terms of tenure in the legislature. And I said, take a very slow approach because you're going to have up to 12 years. He did not take my advice because he said, well, okay, great. Thank you very much for advice. I'm going to now chair the Higher Education Master Plan Select Committee for Education. And for the context, 2 legislators ago, before Mr. Berman was Richard Gordon, before Mr. Gordon was Ira Ruskin. Ira Ruskin also chaired this Select Committee on the Higher Education Master Plan. And the tenure for the legislators during that time was only 6 years, whereas now members, all 4 of us, have up to 12 years in the legislature. Why is that important? Mr. Berman talked about the importance of the timeline of this effort, that this is not going to happen overnight and it's not going to change overnight. So we require your engagement to hold us accountable because you are the subject matter experts. We are generalists. Yet we have our own experiences and backgrounds, most certainly, but you will help guide and shape us here as well. So I want to make that very clear to each and every one of you to make sure that you are engaged with us, that you have our contact information. If you don't have our cell phone numbers, that you have our Chief of Staff cell phone numbers, or you know who our point of contact is with respect to higher education. This is a very deeply important issue to me. Did you know that, for example, that we are one of 2 states that does not have a coordinating entity with respect to higher education, the other state being that of Michigan? There was the California Post-Secondary Commission that focused on the coordinating entity between that of the systems of community colleges, CSUs, and UCs. That was defunded. I had proposed 2 bills that my fellow colleagues also supported and voted for, flew through the legislature onto the governor's desk, unfortunately was vetoed 2 years in a row now. But we are hopeful that this coordinating entity will continue the conversation as we continue to hear from each and every one of you on the specifics on higher education master plan. So I am very hopeful and optimistic that we will be able to make some significant achievements as we continue on the foundation, but that we make some significant change as our tenure, hopefully, should the electorate have us, we will continue to move on. So there is some real meat here. But that your engagement is required because we can't just simply allow government to do everything, but we require your engagement. So I'm very appreciative to be here and looking forward to making sure that we hold Assemblymember Berman accountable to ensuring that he is equally successful because his success is our success.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Lowe, and thank you for all the advice earlier, even if I didn't take all of it. I know I took some of it. Before we get started and bring up our first panelist, I do want to recognize the elected officials in the room. We have Myra Cruz, Vice President of San Jose Evergreen Community College Board of Trustees. She's in the back. We have Ellen Wheeler from the Mountain View Wistman School Board. We have Peter Landsberger from the Foothill De Anza Community College Board. And Gilbert Wong, also from the Foothill De Anza Community College Board. Thank you for joining us, and if I missed anybody, find one of my staff members. They're all over the room, and let them know, and I'll be happy to introduce you as we go through the hearing. So with that, I want to bring up our first panelists, Hans Johnson, who's Director of the Public Policy Institute of California Higher Education Center and a Senior Fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California. Thank you, Hans.
Thank you.
And Londe Ajose, Executive Director of California Competes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we kick it off to you, Hans?
Great. Thank you, Chair Berman, members of the committee, and members of the San Jose community. My name is Hans Johnson. I'm the Director of the Higher Education Center at the Public Policy Institute of California. And it is a great pleasure to be here to talk about a topic that I could go on and on about for a long time, but I will keep my comments brief, and you have before you, members, my formal testimony. What I'd like to do is paint you a picture of where California is now and where we're headed with respect to our labor market and the needs for a more highly educated population. So first, I'm going to talk about some projections we've done at the Public Policy Institute of California, looking at California's economy and population between now and 2030. And the quick summary of our primary finding is that California faces what we call a workforce skills gap. Others have called it a degree gap. And specifically, what our projections show is that if our population continues to change along the lines that it has been, and our higher education institutions continue to serve students in the same way that we have been doing historically, we will not have enough college graduates with at least a bachelor's degree, which is the focus of this work. We've done other work looking at career technical education in the community colleges, and I know Londe will be talking a lot more about that. But with respect to looking at bachelor's degrees or more, we will fall about 1.1 million workers short of economic demand. And so this chart shows you on the far right, here are our projections for the supply of workers, that's the population, which by current trends will mean about a third of workers in California we can expect to have a bachelor's degree by 2030. But our economy is increasingly demanding more highly skilled and highly educated workers. By 2030, almost 4 out of 10, about 38% of jobs would require at least a bachelor's degree. Realize that means most jobs will not, and that's, again, a very important topic on post-secondary education short of a bachelor's degree. But this shortage is the one that we identify as especially critical going forward for California's future. So let me talk a little bit about how we came to those projections. I promise this won't be too dry. I think it's actually, again, a pretty fascinating topic. First, California's economy and economies throughout the world really have increasingly been demanding more highly educated workers. This chart shows you California's projected share of workers with at least a bachelor's degree from the labor market demand side. And you'll see that in 1960, this is an important point I think, when the master plan was developed, only 1 out of 9, 11% of workers in California had a bachelor's degree. Realize that the master plan allowed for the top 1/3 of high school students and the top 1/8 of top 1/3 of high school students to go to the California State University system, and the top 1/8, 12.5%, to go to the University of California. Well, in an economy where only 11% of your workers had a bachelor's degree, that was very progressive and very forward thinking. Today, we still have those same proportions from the master plan. And yet, about 1/3 of our workers have a bachelor's degree or more, and our projection, as I noted, is that that trend will continue. So there are two key drivers of this trend. One is a shift in the economy towards occupations and industries that typically require more higher education, and the other is a shift within occupations themselves from requirements that workers have, say, an associate's or less education towards having a bachelor's degree or more. So we've looked at what's happened most recently coming out of this latest recession and realized that recessions are places where the economy often gets restructured. And this is not new just for the last recession. The last recession, of course, was more severe than almost any before it. But what we see is that recession hurt most less educated workers And in fact, people with a bachelor's or graduate degree had very little employment losses in California's economy during the downturn. And then as we've come out of the downturn, job growth has been most robust among occupations that require a high level of education. So here I'm showing you the percent increase in employment from 2010 to 2015. On the far left are occupations that are highly dependent on college graduates. That's where more than 80% of the workers have a college degree. And in fact, those three left-hand bars include workers who have at least 40%, occupations where at least 40% of the workers have a bachelor's degree. So that's higher than the state average right now. All those three are growing faster than the other two categories. You do see a kind of bifurcation of the economy with very little growth in the less skilled occupations that still have some technical requirements in some cases, and then actually faster growth at the very bottom end. And that's has a lot to say about income inequality, which is a topic for another hearing for another day, so we won't talk about that. Another way to measure demand is to look at all kinds of labor market outcomes, labor force participation rates, unemployment rates. Here I'm showing you wages. All of those indicators show the same thing. Demand for college graduates is very high in our state. Here I'm showing you the average wage. They might seem high. They're pulled high by, we have a lot of high wage earners in California. The medians are somewhat lower. But in any event, the picture is consistent, and that is that college graduates, on average, of course there's a range, but on average do very well in our labor market, with people with a bachelor's degree, for example, earning twice as much as people who have, for example, a high school diploma. And these wage premiums are at an all-time high. They've been going up for decades. So even as the share of workers with a bachelor's degree has grown in our economy, the rewards to those degrees has also grown, a sure sign of strong labor market demand. We've also looked at this, of course, across majors, and it is the case that certain majors are more remunerative than other majors. This chart shows you the net lifetime payoff of going to college from a wage perspective compared to only having a high school diploma. And we've actually subtracted from the wages that college graduates earn the cost of going to college, which are tuition, fees, room and board, and the opportunity cost of not having worked during those years when you were in college, or at least not having worked full-time, because we know many students do work at least part-time. And you'll see that, of course, no surprise, students who major in engineering and computer science do very, very well in California with a net lifetime payoff of over $1 million. But even at the lowest level, which are people who have an education major, which is maybe a sad statement about our economy and our values, but even those least well-paid majors still do better than they would have had they not gone to and graduated from college. So that then brings me to, that's the economic side. Now let's turn to the population side. And you're going to have to tell me how I'm doing on time. I see I have a 1-minute warning. Not yet. Not yet. Good. So the key critical challenge facing us from a population perspective is the aging of the baby boom. And you'll see it here. This is the change in the population between 2015 to 2030. And the large bars there are baby boomers, people who are aging out of the labor market. And so not only is this the first time in the history of California or the United States, or in fact anywhere in the developed world, that such a large number of people are exiting the labor force, but they're also well educated. They are one of the highest educated groups in our state. And they're being replaced by young adult populations that are not growing nearly as fast. So this creates a tremendous challenge for us in terms of improving the pipeline to and through college. And let me just kind of reiterate one of the primary concerns that we have as we've done this work. And specifically, we see very little generational progress in higher education in California. So here I'm showing you, and I'm sorry you can't quite read the x-axis here, but I'm showing you for all the OECD countries and then California, which I've added to this list, the share of workers who have at least a bachelor's degree. And what I'm showing you right now are the share with of 55 to 64-year-olds. Those are people who are about ready to retire, who have a bachelor's degree. In California, that's about 31%. That's higher than any other OECD country. And there's several dozen countries on here, actually higher than the United States as a whole. And now I'm going to show you how we're doing with respect to young adults. These are 25 to 34-year-olds. Here, California ranks near the bottom. This is sorted, of course, by the 25 to 34-year-olds, with countries on the far left having experienced not only dramatic increases in generational educational attainment improvements, but reaching far higher levels than we see in California. So to me, this also reiterates this tremendous demand and need to do better than we've been doing. We're competing in a global economy, but we are not equipping our young adults in California to succeed in that global economy as well as other places have. So we've done a lot of work looking at this pipeline in California, from high school through college and to college completion. And unfortunately, it's a very leaky pipeline. So here I'm showing you for every 1,000 ninth graders in California, based on current transition rates and completion rates, how many will end up earning a bachelor's degree. And it's a little over, out of those 1,000 ninth graders, it's just a little over 300 will end up earning a bachelor's degree at current rates. We actually do not too badly in terms of the transition from high school graduate to college. We rank 5th in the country in the share of high school graduates that go to community colleges, which is great, but we rank near the bottom, 47th in the country in the share of high school graduates that go to a 4-year college or university. This is a tremendous challenge and has clear master plan implications. And then finally, you'll see that the blue bar there that connects the community colleges with the 4-year colleges and universities, and that number is simply way too low. And the community colleges, to their credit, under President Eloy Oakley's, Chancellor Eloy Oakley's initiative, have issued a very ambitious goal to improve that number. So what do we do to close the gap? Here I'm showing you the number of additional bachelor's degrees that would be required in California to close the gap. That's the green line compared to the orange line. It looks ambitious. It is ambitious. But there are periods in our history where we have grown the number of bachelor's degrees we've awarded in a similar magnitude to what we're projecting. And to do that, we need to improve completion, we need to improve transfer, and we need to improve first-time access, especially to our 4-year colleges and universities. PPIC has a lot of work that we have shared and will continue to share with the committee on how to do that. We've broken it down by segment for UC, CSU, the community colleges. There's good news. Colleges like San Jose State University and other CSU campuses are embarked on a very ambitious graduation initiative to improve completion rates. As I mentioned, the community colleges have a new vision for success that, if realized, would increase the number of transfer students to UC and CSU by 35% over the next 5 years, which is exactly consistent with what needs to happen according to our projections. I was on their advisory committee and was pleased they adopted that recommendation. And UC wants to increase enrollment as long as they get the support from the state. I know CSU and community colleges are also very concerned about support for the state. But the short answer is, we created this system. We can solve these problems. I'm very pleased that the committee is looking at these topics. They are topics for the short term and the long term, and I look forward to continuing to participate with you as we seek to find answers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hans. Londe.
Maybe.
Is there?
Oh, it's in the back.
Well, I'll start by saying good morning
Good morning.
and happy birthday.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me. My name is Londe Ajose, and there's the cover slide. I'm the Executive Director of California Competes, Higher Education for a Strong Economy. We're an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit project focused on bolstering the state's post-secondary outcomes and fostering a more robust economy, more vibrant communities, and a more engaged citizenry. All of our work really has to do with making the economic case for higher education and doing so in a way that increases college completion here in California. We're guided by a leadership council of business and civic leaders, and the reason we have selected them is because they really represent the demand side of the economy, and we think it's important to contextualize the conversation around higher education by thinking not just about what do we need from our institutions, but what do we need for our employers, for our communities, so that we can live in a much more vibrant or continually vibrant economy and communities. And we want to make sure that we do that in a way that allows our state to deliver much more equitable outcomes from higher education. So I'd like to speak with you today about, how do you point this? There we go. About the future of the Golden State. In the 1960s, we emerged as an economic powerhouse that was the envy, as Hans just said, not just of other states, but of nations. In addition to our glorious sun and sand that we have in California, we're also known for the richness of our economy. We're at the top of our game in agriculture and natural resources, shipping and logistics. Everyone knows about Hollywood, the computer industry. And in this last area in particular, we're making huge strides in terms of artificial intelligence and data science and augmented reality. It's very rich. And our ability to be able to be at the forefront of these innovative and creative industries all hinges on California's higher education system. It was the implementation of the master plan in the 1960s that expanded access to higher education and focused our colleges on these distinct roles that Hans mentioned that have contributed to the unprecedented economic growth that we've seen. We've also seen how the world has changed in the past several decades. And what we know is that in places where you have the creativity and the industriousness and the entrepreneurship that comes from training and education, that you end up with good jobs. Those jobs create strong communities. Those strong communities contribute to more education. And so there's a cycle of upwards improvement in communities, of education, of families, of opportunity that reaches people from all backgrounds and is really critical to getting us to having folks with more degrees and credentials. What's unfortunate is that despite the investment, California has actually slipped in terms of producing the kind of talent that we need to remain an economic powerhouse. And the reason is, as Hans said, we're not producing enough skilled graduates. In higher education, with 48% degree attainment, which is what is estimated by the Lumina Foundation for Education in terms of what we have in this state, we rank 17th now out of all the states in the nation in terms of the proportion of adults between the ages of 25 and 64 with associate's degree or above. We have a report called Mind the Gap, and what it found is that by 2025, if our current trends continue, that we will not produce the quality, the quantity, or the diversity of college degrees needed to maintain the state's economic vitality. Our analysis is predicated on the idea that California should be amongst the top 10 states in the nation producing college graduates. And like my colleagues at PPIC, we estimate that degree attainment gap to be about 1 million bachelor's degrees and an additional 1.4 million sub-baccalaureate degrees. Those are meaningful associate's degrees, degrees that require at least 9 months or more of training, where we will be short of what this state needs. Those degrees are important not only for the economic gains that they deliver to individuals, but also because of the other benefits to society that go along with having a post-secondary education credential. Those with sub-baccalaureate degrees will contribute to the state by way of tax revenues, and they also, degree attainment is also very positively correlated with higher civic engagement, including voting. The problem that we face is that the state can't increase our degree production in time to meet that 2025 goal. This graphic tells the story, and without going into all of the numbers, the blue is what we're projected to produce if you, once you account for people who are going to be retiring, and the green is what we would produce if we increase degree production by 10% per year, each year, so that by 2025 we'd have about 800,000 more degrees. And the red, finally, is the cumulative number of degrees needed if we were to close that gap. And so you can see if we accomplished producing the number of degrees in the green, we would actually begin to close the gap. Our institutions, the institutional segments, are mindful of these pressures around closing the degree attainment gap. albeit for some different reasons. Concerns about California residents having access have prompted the University of California to expand the number of seats in recent years by 10,000 degrees. But even at a 6-year graduation rate of 84%, the system would generate 8,400 graduates, which is what you see in that little sliver. At the CSU, as Hans mentioned, there is a graduation initiative. Right now, the CSU has a not sterling record of a 19% overall institutions, a 19% graduation rate over 4 years. But the BOLD graduation initiative by 2025 would yield about 500,000 new graduates. And while that is very significant, you can see that it still leaves us substantially short of where we need to be in terms of closing the gap for the 2.4 million. Our report also examines choices around course of study over a 10-year period. So we looked back between 2000, I think it was 4 to 2014 or so, to see where are we producing graduates. And what we found is that despite the much discussed need for more STEM majors, fewer than a quarter of our graduates, both at the CSU and UC, majored in biology, health professions, engineering, and computer science. There's a range of other things that folks are majoring in. And then I'm sorry this is so small, but then when you start to disaggregate that by race, what you find is that the likelihood of people from different racial and ethnic groups then means that they are much less likely to major in these top fields. So if you look at engineering, for example, it is not among the top 10 majors for blacks or Latinos in the state of California, even though statewide it ranks as 7th. Our examination of the top 10 sub-baccalaureate credentials revealed that over 2/5 of all degrees were taken in the health professions, while only 4% were taken in computer tech and engineering tech, respectively. And again, when disaggregated by race, we see that outcomes, once you account for the health professions, are very much differentiated by race. It bears mentioning, and I know Hans would agree with me, that knitting all these data together, is not for the weak of heart. We have very antiquated data systems here in the state of California that don't integrate our institutional data and certainly don't integrate it with our K-12 or our partners in workforce or our partners in K-12. And that is problematic in terms of really being able to develop some strong solutions. When the master plan was originally crafted in 1960, it focused on elements necessary for expanding and guaranteeing access to California residents. Since then, the demographics of this state have changed dramatically, and we need our higher education systems, all of them, to respond to a host of issues never envisioned by the original master plan architects. A conversation about access must be paired with a conversation about equity if we're to ensure that the benefits of higher education reach broad and deep in ways that serve our civic and economic interests. Affordability must not only be thought of as an issue of tuition, but also in terms of managing the total cost of attendance for students, which includes addressing steep costs of housing, books, and other expenses. The state must not rely on accrediting agencies to judge that we maintain top academic quality, but must develop mechanisms for ensuring that we're doing this ourselves. We have to find ways to address the systemic inequities that exist within our K-12 system so that we can ensure that those inequities don't result in educational stratification once they get to the post-secondary education system. And finally, California's higher education systems must be much more integrated with our workforce system if we're to ensure that we are developing talent in the right fields so that our growing economies are well served. And so I would ask you all to continue to think about the master plan as you think about it, to think about all these silences that currently exist within the current plan. I also hope that you consider some policies that will focus on increased degree attainment for students, paying particular attention to the majors that the state most needs to fuel our economies, and ensuring that we have greater equity within academic majors. This will necessitate improving our advising systems on campus to ensure that students are informed about labor market opportunities as they make choices about courses of studies to pursue. We must align our course curricula with the economic needs, being ever mindful that business cycles move at much more rapidly than educational institutions do, and that a certain responsiveness is required. Finally, we can address more immediate workforce needs by re-engaging those in the state with some college and no degree. adults with labor market experience for whom an additional semester or perhaps an additional year would allow them to complete their degrees and be meaningfully engaged in the economy. I think taken together, these policies can equitably expand opportunity for California residents as well as for our state's broader economy, and I thank you for including us on the panel.
Well, thank you very much. And before I turn it over to my colleagues for any questions or comments they have, I just want to say my biggest frustration with the Select Committee has been that every one of these conversations could be 2.5 hours long. But we try to jam so much in because it is such a complex task that we're taking on. But I know a couple of my colleagues and I spent a day and a half with Dr. Ajose and her team a couple of weeks ago, and Hans and his team have done analyses and written reports on every single topic that we've been covering, and so the conversations go way beyond just here today. But with that, want to kick it off to any colleagues for questions they might have or comments.
I would just make the comment that I just appreciate, as Evan said, we're all by the design of our job, we have to be somewhat generalist in the things that we look at. Well, we all have a very intense interest in this. We don't have I don't say it's a luxury, but to spend as much time as you get just focusing on this. So we hugely value the work that you do and the input, and we'll look forward to your guidance as we go forward, because I think you hit on all the core issues that we need to be talking about.
Just a clarifying question, but maybe perhaps Hans, on the slide with respect to too few students complete college. And you use the metrics of out of 1,000 ninth graders, and then at the very end, of those 1,000, 305 earn a bachelor's degree. And so if I just do sort of basic math, 30%, is that?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
So the statement then is accurate to say that only 30% of Californians will actually attain a bachelor's degree. Is that correct?
As they move through this pipeline, as Londe mentioned, there is a challenge in re-engaging older adults. So some people do stop out for a while and then come back. It's not a big number, so it's probably just 2 or 3 percentage points on top of that 30%. But some people do come back later in life and earn a bachelor's degree. And that number includes our bachelor's. We follow students to the extent that we can, not only to California public universities and private universities, but also students who leave the state. And increasingly, we're seeing more students leave the state. And we know both at UC and CSU, many thousands of students every year are turned away because there's not enough room for students who have done everything we've asked of them, whether it's actually high school graduates, but also transfer students who are technically transfer eligible, but are not finding space for themselves in our own systems and are turning to other places, or in some cases not going at all.
Thank you.
Question, and it's a pretty broad question. Suggestions that you have for us as legislators to do more to narrow the workforce gap that you've demonstrated to us.
Well, I do think it starts with helping students to do two things. One is to better navigate their own institutions, that a lot of students, there's a problem with degree attainment in part because it's taking students such a long time to get through, and they struggle to navigate the systems that they're in. There's lots of stories about, wow, I can't get the class I need, and so students are very enterprising, and they'll find a different college to go here and go there, but that takes time. And for every semester it takes, that's another, while the student's also paying tuition, it's also an increment that the state is paying. So really trying to think about how do we streamline, as Chancellor Eloy is thinking about with guided pathways, how do we start to streamline that experience for our students, and how do we ensure that students are getting information about the labor market in ways that is early enough for them to make some decisions, so that as they're trying to navigate that pathway, they're also doing it with the idea that they know that the skills that they're developing are actually going to be skills that are in high demand. Not necessarily for specific occupations, because what we want to make sure students have is an opportunity to use those skills in multiple places, because people don't stay in jobs as long as they used to. And so those have to be really flexible sets of skills that can be adapted to multiple environments.
So I echo those comments. I would add 3 things. First, you should, and I know you are, working with the systems to make sure that there is room for students who have done everything right to enroll in our higher education institutions. So that's about eligibility. And if more students are eligible, which is happening, our high schools are actually producing more UC and CSU eligible students, we should meet that demand rather than increase the eligibility criteria and shut out students, which is what has happened in the past when too many students are doing what they're supposed to do in high school. Secondly, I would say working on transfer is huge. There's been some positive steps, associate degree for transfer, for example, but we need better articulation and smoother articulation between the systems for that to really work. And that is, of course, when we're talking about the tremendous need to make sure that higher education serves as an economic ladder of mobility. It is the community colleges that serve the most diverse population in California, the most low-income population in California. So that's critical. And then the third item, and this isn't just a researcher item, but it is also that we need a good longitudinal student data system. I'm hoping that you'll be able to work with the next governor in helping see that come to fruition. And the reason that matters for students and institutions is that allows us to know who higher education is serving, who it's working for, and who it's not. And without that data, we're not able to tell you what's working and not working with the kind of precision we would like to have.
Follow up, and thank you for that. And because as we're talking about everything, I think you identify a key issue is like, as we try to move forward, what is legislative, what is just system leadership, and then what comes back to funding, right? I mean, those are kind of the three buckets that if we can get everything moving in the right direction, then we make some progress. I asked for an audit from the LAO looking at capacity in our systems, thinking that we have a capacity issue and we would need to build a new university. But they said, no, it's all fine. It's all fine. There's room for everybody, and just with what we currently have. So I think we have different ways of looking at data that I think so that's another huge issue, is how do we compile all the data that we all ask for and then putting it into something, again, and then figuring out what's legislative, what's just system leadership, and what's funding issues. I think some of the things we look at are, as you said, antiquated. And then back to Mr. Lowe's point, I was going to follow up just about, as somebody who did not go directly to college but went to the military first, do we do a good track of tracking our military veterans as they go somewhere else, oftentimes get degrees online and other places, come out with huge debt, but are we tracking that population and how then they re-enter the workforce at all?
We're not tracking them as well as we should, and I know Lande's done a lot of work looking at re-engagement.
Yeah, we're trying to think about how do you re-engage folks who have been out for whatever period of time to get them back in. And there's a lot of discussion around valuing the work experiences that students have had, and so being able to offer credit for that, thinking about...
We've done some of that legislatively.
which is fantastic. Thinking about modularizing some of the education so that you can get stackable credentials and credits. And again, those are the kinds of things that allow students to have some fluidity in how they think about integrating both their current labor market experiences and their academic experiences. So it's really talking about turning how we've thought about education traditionally on its head, in part because we tend to think of most college students as being 18 to 24 years old. That's not who most college students are these days. Most college students are adults, they have families oftentimes, and so we need to think about how do our systems accommodate those students rather than assuming that students are just, coming from living with mom and dad and moving into a dorm. So I think it is important to be thinking about all of those and to be ensuring that there are the kinds of state support for those students to then be able to attend college, because it's not clear to me how someone who is an adult, who has debt, who has children, who has a mortgage, then affords to stop out for a while and go back to school to complete a degree. So I do think that we need to be thinking, and I say this, truth in advertising, I'm on the Student Aid Commission, but I say this because I think it's really important to be thinking about what are the sources of support that we offer for students so that they can complete their degrees.
And can I just add on the capacity issue? So I have a lot of respect for the LAO. I think they do good work. But clearly, when we have students who are not finding a space for themselves, there are capacity issues. We just issued a report that looks at regional capacity, including the San Joaquin Valley, the Inland Empire, and Los Angeles County. And we deliberated. Do we recommend more campuses? What do we do? And we decided that the most efficient response would be to increase capacity at our current institutions, including satellite campuses. And I know the legislature has actually put some support behind some satellite campuses in the Inland Empire, Palm Desert, for example, which is a satellite campus for Cal State San Bernardino. But there are ways to move forward without establishing brand new campuses and all the expenses those occur, which do have to do with addressing capacity constraints at key colleges and universities. I would say probably also President here at San Jose State. And thinking about it in terms of innovation, housing CSU bachelor's degrees programs at community colleges, which in some cases are having a hard time hitting their enrollment caps right now. So there are things that we can do short of establishing a brand new campus that I think all of you should be thinking about, and that's part of what the legislature wants in terms of efficiencies and accountability in our higher ed system as well.
Just one note on the capacity question, which is something like 22 out of 23 of our CSUs are impacted. Almost all of our UCs are impacted. So there's definitely some capacity constraints. One thing I think we have to be very careful about is how we approach, because a lot of the solution that gets talked about sometimes in Sacramento and around the state is, well, online learning is the solution. And I think we have to be very careful about how we approach that, particularly for students who haven't necessarily been as successful in the K-12 system. To then tell them, yes, you can go to college, but you're going to have to do it online, isn't necessarily the best way for them to learn. And that's when I said we need to be thinking about learning and quality and accountability. That's part of it, is we need to be thinking and making sure that we're providing students with the best way for them to be able to learn and get the most out of their education as well.
I mean, you walk around this campus, right? It is a vision of opportunity, right? So I hear what you're saying, that we don't need to build more, we just need to make do with what we have. But the symbol that it provides for a community cannot be equaled sitting in your house looking at something online. And again, if we look at the analogy between prisons, in which I have 3 in my district, and higher education institutions, and I have none, and we have capacity issues in both, but we find a way.
A quick kind of follow-up question. Given that Assemblymember Lowe pointed out that the state of California has no overreaching body, and this question's to Hans, has no body to look at statewide policy, who should determine? How can the state of California determine when it needs a new campus in a new location?
Well, Londe and I can do that. No, I'm kidding. Perfect. I think that that is one reason why we need a coordinating body. All of you know that the master plan included among its tenets a coordinating body. Londe has been very articulate about how, and has published a report about what that might look like at PPIC. We've done work arguing for a coordinating body for some time now. And again, I think a new governor will be key in making that happen. There have been bills for many years, not just yours, but yours as well, that have not been signed. And I think the critical questions are, what do you want that coordinating body to be, and how is it going to be successful? And that has to do everything with who it responds to, who it is accountable to. If it's a member-based body, who appoints the members? But at the end of the day, it needs to be an objective, nonpartisan, empirically based analysis of our higher education needs, with a focus on not what's necessarily good for the institutions, but what's good for the state and its people. And as much as I love CSU, and I actually have taken courses at all of our public segments, and I have a son now at a private nonprofit, I think that their focus often, not always, is what's best for the institution, and often, but not always, that's what's best for the student as well. But the state needs to have a role in saying what's best for the student, what's best for underserved students, and that might have to do with regional campus. There's UC Merced exists partly as a response to that. So in any event, I think that's your role, is to say what's the state's focus, and how do we achieve that through this body in an effective way. And look, you could end up deciding, well, having really powerful leadership in the legislature and the governor's office is all that's necessary, and we don't need this body. I would say we certainly need a body to at least be able to tell us empirically and get into the weeds in ways that you're not able to, what's working and what's not working. But
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer to your questions.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all your comments and all of your questions. So before we bring up our next panelist, I want to quickly introduce all of the different leaders of our educational institutions in the region who are here today. I'm just going to, I'll just read out the names and then let's all applaud for everybody at the end would be great. But we have Father Eng, president of Santa Clara University. We have Thuy Nguyen, president of the Foothill Community College. Ron Galatolo, chancellor of the San Mateo Community College District. Judy Miner, chancellor of the Foothill De Anza Community College District. Judith Gregg, president of Notre Dame de Namur. Maureen O'Connor, president of Palo Alto University. And Debbie Budd, chancellor of San Jose Evergreen Community College, with us today. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. When I hear about all the leaders that are in the room, it makes me nervous. But I really appreciate you all participating. So we're going to move on to panel 2, which is perspectives from the business community. And so I'd like to bring up Laura Guillot, Vice President of Systems Services Center of Competency and Sales at IBM. Scott McGuckin, Senior Director of Talent Acquisition at Kaiser Permanente. And Nicole Rice, Policy Director of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. And why don't we'll just go down the line. So Ms. Guillot, if you'd like to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to echo the comments of those that came before us. There is a grave need here in the state of California and across this great nation of what we need to do around higher education. At this time in the United States, we have over 500,000 of jobs across different states. In IBM alone, we have thousands of jobs that are never answered on a daily basis of what we're trying to fill. Those thousands of jobs need high-tech skills, but maybe not necessarily a 4-year degree. There's a struggling number of modern middle-class jobs that are going unfilled here in the nation, and IBM's trying to address that. They are blue-collar jobs, and they're not white-collar jobs. They're something that we're calling new-collar workers. These jobs focus on capabilities and not necessarily credentials. These opportunities can help fill a lot of the gaps that we have in the tech industry for job needs today. Some of those come into the areas of cybersecurity, around cloud technology, and around other jobs that could help be filled if we could work out the education system and how we go about this and what are those needs of industry here. And that's why the three of us are here talking today. IBM has done quite a bit in this field. We've coined a new way of going about education, something called P-TECH, which is a 9 through 14 grade system. We kicked that off a number of years ago. We have 60 high schools across the nation. But a lot of this change is going to take legislative change, and I know that's why we're here today. So we definitely have an opinion. We have things that we're doing as a technology leader in the United States, and we'd like to continue to grow our workforce here in the nation. And to the question that you asked earlier around veterans, this is a key area that we're focusing on, is retraining our veterans. The IBM Corporation has committed to hiring 2,000 veterans in the next 4 years to fill some of these new collar positions that we have open. So those are some of the things that we're focused on.
Great. Thank you very much. And Mr. McGuckin.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Let me just also thank the earlier presenters that might have stepped out, but I was thinking about my 11 and 13-year-old daughters when I saw Mr. Johnson's lifetime earnings graph. I would like to get a copy of that and bring that home with me, so as motivation for their education. So again, my name is Scott McGuckin. I'm a Senior Director of Talent Acquisition at Kaiser Permanente, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Kaiser Permanente is recognized as one of the nation's leading healthcare providers and not-for-profit health plans. We currently serve 11.8 million members in 8 states and the District of Columbia. We know that a robust healthcare workforce is critical to Kaiser Permanente accomplishing its mission to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare and to improve the health of our members and the communities that we serve. California's population, as we already heard from the earlier presenters, is growing, aging, and becoming increasingly diverse. Trends that place an untenable burden on the state's health workforce. The pipeline of caregivers, including doctors, nurses, therapists and elder care specialists has not kept pace with demand, particularly in underserved, rural, and ethnically and linguistically diverse communities. More coordinated planning and investment is needed now to ensure that California has the right people with the right training in the right places to fill current and new roles that will be essential to meeting future health needs. With regard to some of the challenges that we're facing with our workforce needs, we're a large organization, and of course it's hard to distill some of our needs down to a few bullets, but I'll just reference a couple of specific areas within our workforce, starting with primary care clinicians. According to the Health Force Center at UCSF, California is facing an imminent shortage of primary care clinicians. The number of physicians completing primary care residencies in California does not appear adequate to replace the primary care physicians who are likely to retire in the coming decade. We also have expected shortages in behavioral health, nursing management, allied health, and more broadly speaking, this has already come up earlier today, but workforce diversity. Let me comment on that. Workforce diversity is important to improving the health and wellness of Californians. Many experts believe that a workforce that mirrors the racial and ethnic diversity of California will increase access to care and improve the quality of care that we can provide to our members and to our patients. As such, a more diverse cadre of physicians, nurses, and other healthcare delivery professionals is a crucial strategy for improving the health and wellness of underserved communities. I'd like to briefly talk a little bit about what we're doing to both increase the development of our own workforce and also some of the partnerships that we found to be successful with higher education institutions here in California. Like many organizations, we do a lot to develop our own staff. We have over 1,200 courses and videos that we employ to develop our workforce as a supplementary education to what they might be receiving in higher education. We have curriculum for leaders, for new grads, but I'd like to highlight a couple of programs that we found to be very successful within the organization. We have, as you would expect, a fairly robust graduate medical education program, and the purpose of this is to provide an organized educational program with guidance and supervision for residents, facilitating the residents' professional and personal development while ensuring that we provide adequate safety for our patients. And we have partnerships with UC Davis, UC San Francisco, in Northern California and Southern California. We partner with UC Irvine, UC Riverside, UCLA. They're among our current list of affiliates. In addition to this work, our residency programs also offer initiatives focused on increasing recruitment and retention of a diverse, culturally educated healthcare workforce. And for time's sake, I won't go into detail on those, but that is something that we're engaged with as well. As we look at the broader healthcare workforce, we have a trust called the Ben Hudnall Memorial Trust that was established in 2007, which provides career counseling services and access to education and training programs across the KP regions. And I'll reference a few that we found to be particularly successful. We have a degree completion program with Coastline Community College down in Costa Mesa. It's designed for those who have already completed some college-level coursework, perhaps from a variety of academic institutions, who would now like the opportunity to turn that collection of classes into an academic certificate or an associate's degree. And what makes this program successful for our employees is that Coastline has several articulation agreements with institutions within California that offer guaranteed admission. We also have an RN to BSN program, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, with CSU Fullerton. And this is a customized individual stipend program developed for those pursuing BSN degrees. We have a partnership with CSU San Marcos. And this is for employees to complete lab science prereqs online that may be required for nursing and allied health disciplines. In addition to those, we also provide community benefit workforce development grants. And one example of that is the Santa Rosa Junior College High School Pathways to Health Careers program. I'll say that once, it's hard to say twice. Since 2015, we've supported this program, which works with Sonoma County 11th and 12th grade students from underrepresented backgrounds in a multi-year program that features advanced healthcare professional training, skills lab, job shadowing, and work-based learning. And over 375 students have actually gone through that program since 2015. We're also directly contributing to the academic development of the healthcare workforce in California through a couple of schools that Kaiser Permanente started, the KP School of Allied Health Sciences and our School of Medicine, which is scheduled to open down in Pasadena in the fall of 2019. With regard to what role higher education plays in meeting workforce needs and what role industry can play, we believe that industry should articulate its needs, including trends in the marketplace. We've heard that this morning. Industry needs to invest in higher education in that way to ensure that higher education is as relevant as possible. Like many industries, healthcare is in a period of transformation. Unfortunately, change comes in relatively short 18 to 24-month waves. We usually cannot provide, 5-year plans, for example, as has been requested from us in the past. In addition to fostering strong relationships between industry and higher education, universities need to become as agile as possible just because of the speed of change in industry. But we believe that together we can provide education, develop critical thinking skills, practical work experience, and provide access to the latest scientific research. And all of this, we believe, will provide relevant and needed knowledge, skills, and experience for a ready California workforce. I think we can all recognize that the healthcare workforce is vital for us here in California and beyond. It constitutes a significant portion of the state's labor market, and it is a source of care for Californians. Developing a coordinated and comprehensive strategy is not something that can be done in isolation and will require intentional levels of collaboration and cooperation between multiple players. And we look forward to being a part of the solution with policymakers and the state, as well as other health workforce partners. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rice.
Thank you. I'm going to take this so I don't have to lean. So thank you, Chairman Berman, and all the members who are here today. Thank you for the invitation. Once again, my name is Nicole Rice. I'm Policy Director with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We represent the interest of the 30,000 plus manufacturers here in California who employ 1.3 million Californians and have hundreds of billions of dollars in our economic activity here in the state. So we're always proud to talk about this issue because of the deficit that we have in middle skills workers who can fill those positions, that are rapidly becoming available as our workforce, our existing workforce who built the country and the systems that we know today, they're retiring. So we need to backfill those positions, excuse me, with workers who have the technical skills necessary to continue to lead California and the nation into the innovation future. So before I make my comments, I want to make a disclaimer that I'm going to talk in broad terms as our industry sees the challenges and opportunities with the higher ed system. And I'm going to define those broad terms in kind of bold colors. But I think this discussion is timely and necessary for where industries are in California. I also want to say that there are going to be exceptions to what I say. There are many great things happening in the field, but I think from a systemic viewpoint, where I believe you all will be looking at this, I think that there is some concerns and challenges that need to be addressed. When I took a look at the master plan in preparation for this hearing, I noticed that it's really a structural document, and that its main goal was to really delineate the roles of the different segments of the system and what they were going to do. The role of, at that time, vocational education or career preparation was housed in the community colleges, local colleges at the time. And then you have CSU and UC who have their roles and responsibilities. Today, the standard for education attainment is now looking at the requirements of the University of California. However, the University of California, by their own admission, do not have a workforce goal. They're training researchers, scholars, academics, but they're not training welders or maintenance mechanics or plant operators, which are those middle skill jobs that our industry is desperately in need of. As that standard becomes the goal and the objective of California's education system, all the way down, informing as far down as the K through 12 system, we ask as an industry the question, where does that leave middle skills training? That loss of delineation between the segments in the system is creating what is becoming a serious disconnect between California's higher ed system and the world of work, and continues to make and has made the attainment of a degree the success of the education system, instead of preparing students for careers to be able to compete in the 21st century economy. If that situation isn't addressed, then the middle skills pipeline will continue to be at a deficit, and industries like mine will continue to struggle to find workers. And for manufacturers, if we can't find the workers to be able to do and perform the responsibilities of our industry, then we can't be competitive, either here in California or nationally. And California continues to lead in manufacturing as well. So our encouragement as the master plan is being reviewed is to encourage those segments to embrace those delineations that were once there. In the community college, there are various success stories that we have working with community colleges to build a manufacturing workforce, lots of good programs out there, and we actually sat on the Strong Workforce Task Force. So we were part of those conversations and those recommendations to move to enhance their career opportunities and goals. However, as that continues to roll out, it's kind of hit and miss, as well as we see in the K through 12 system. Very hit and miss, where you get high quality, successful programs that we define are programs that are aligned to industry needs, informed by labor market data. And we continue to kind of see, hit and miss in success to provide that type of training. So we encourage you to consider those delineations, to encourage that the segments continue to move forward in those delineations, and let them do the things that they're good at without abandoning those workforce development needs that are embedded in the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open up to colleagues if they have any questions or comments.
Well, you just made me think, Nicole, about, this is not necessarily tied to higher education, but we've all been hearing on the on news and everything today about the gas tax that's going into effect today, which is going to pump billions of dollars in the economy and create hundreds of thousands of jobs. And I'm wondering if you guys have thought about how that's going to have an impact on technology and manufacturing, if you're going to lose a bunch of workers, if there's only so many workers who are doing that kind of middle skill labor market, if we have hundreds of thousands of new jobs, what's that going to do to the existing economy and jobs that are out there right now that are being filled by those level workers? I know, and I've got family in Oroville, and everybody else lost all their workers when they started working on the dam because they were paying good money and right now and long hours, right? So the timber industry, everybody else who was dependent on those same workers was at a loss.
I don't think, for our industry, we have not discussed that. I don't know how much of an impact that will have on what we're currently facing in the system. And the reality is that there is just not enough training going on. So I think that actually adds to the narrative that we need to think about expanding and diversifying that training and making sure, because that we have training to fulfill and to impact all the different job opportunities that might come in the future. 5 years ago, we might have never thought that we would have this opportunity for these jobs. So, it's the system quite frankly, ready to be able to deal with what the future might bring us as we deal with, climate change and those technologies, as we deal with just the pressure we're getting from innovation and the marketplace constantly pressuring to have more innovation, more consumer consumption, and we're going to need a workforce. It might not be necessarily in my industry more jobs, but it'll be higher skilled jobs. It'll be a different skill set than what we might currently be seeing today, and certainly what we saw 50 years or so ago. So I think what the challenge is making sure that there is enough training going on for those industries that have been identified by various state industries or entities as being emerging or priority industries. We need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those industries in our training today, not just starting in higher ed, but also as K through 12 is the feeder to higher ed, having students become introduced and engaged in those type of career pursuits, then we need to make sure that that type of hands-on training is available. And to piggyback on what one of the other panelists said, it's important to have industry's engagement and voice in the development and contemplation of that training, because we are out there in the field and we are forecasting for our own business needs, so we can help inform educators about where the trends in employment are going.
So just piggybacking off of that, and that was one of the reasons why we asked all of you to participate today is I think all of your industries, there's an expected workforce pipeline deficit pending, and all of you, Laura, you mentioned P-TECH, Scott, you talked about Santa Rosa program, Nicole, you mentioned that there are some programs out there that are working and others that aren't, in reaching even before higher ed to high school and before. Can you talk a little bit more about the P-TECH program or the program you have in Santa Rosa? I'd love to learn more about what's working and how we can kind of encourage and foster those programs that go from high school through higher ed and into the workforce, whether it's just community college or bachelor's degrees.
Sure, I'll start with P-TECH. So P-TECH was something that IBM started. Our first school opened in 2015 in New York. We were focused on lower income areas within the New York area and being able to reach out to students that wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity. Now that coupled with the need for non-four-year degrees to start with. And this is a great example of where industry coupling with higher education and the high school level education, coming up with a program that satisfied the needs of both the community and the workforce. This is something that's gone beyond just IBM. We have other high-tech industries that are joining us in these other 59 schools around the United States. But first and foremost, it took a change in legislation in the state of New York to recognize this as a degreed program of 9 through 14. Now, the way that we've worked it is we commit to the students that if you have successfully completed as you're going through the program, we start providing internships in the 12th grade through 14 and then guarantee them a job upon graduation. Now, they have a choice at that point in time to either continue working full-time or go on to finish the last 2 years for a higher education degree. And don't get me wrong, higher education degrees are also very needed in the high-tech industry, but it's not all about BS, BA degrees, and master's degrees. It's also, there are a lot of jobs out there that can be satisfied by this specific skill set if we're willing to train them. This is where I think taking in combination community colleges, which is such an important part. In new collar jobs, we've identified 15 community colleges around the United States that we're working on to supply them with what are the needs of industry to make sure that their curriculum is matching the jobs that we have open within our workforce. And that's really important, and I think my panelists up here have all hit on the same topic is it's not just a high school or a four-year degree or a master's degree. There's a lot in between there that's not being addressed by our education system.
Well said. I would just add to that it seems like it's a both and discussion, right? There's a lot of different issues that we can address. We have a community benefit function because we're a not-for-profit organization. And through that entity, we do fund a number of these types of programs, and oftentimes they're aimed at trying to get more underprivileged students engaged in, for us at least, the health arena. And so we found those to be pretty successful. It introduces them to something that might be somewhat unfamiliar. And so we're leaning into that, and we continue to fund programs like that because we believe that we're seeing good results in terms of their continuing education and going on to pursue degrees in STEM-related coursework and in the health arena, and all of that, of course, is beneficial to us as well as the industry at large.
So, two examples, and then maybe if I can share with you just still, even in the midst of all this great work, what they're seeing in companies on the ground. So Manufacturing Day is a national event. It's the first Friday of October for the last maybe 3 to 5 years. And it's an opportunity. It's where industry has responded, where we're seeing that kids don't really understand what manufacturing careers are. They think of manufacturing from the 1950s, and they're frankly not interested. And we recognize on our part, we have a role to play in helping to educate the population in large what manufacturing is, so students can see it as a career path, and parents can actually be proud if their students choose that as a career path. So Manufacturing Day is a giant open house across the nation where we partner with K through 12 districts as well as community colleges and invite them into our facilities and show them the cool and neat things that are happening in manufacturing and the different types of career opportunities that they could have in the industry. So that's one way that we're kind of proactively getting involved. And these are very large events. I think we had definitely over 200 events this year, close to 300 last year. I don't have this year's number off the top of my head, but that's just in California alone, and this is a nationwide event. The second example is down in Southern California. There's an industry group called the Manufacturing Council of the Inland Empire that was formed because one of the larger manufacturers in the region, California Steel Industries, had a skills gap need, and they were having some challenges finding programs that were actually teaching what they needed their candidates to understand. So not only did they look at their own need, but they looked at it regionally, and there's a lot of discussion about regionalism related to education and collaboration, and so they understood the constraints of the community college system and be able to have a classroom that provides instruction for only 5 or 6 students. So they went through the region, combined industry needs, and started working with Chaffee Community College as well as their workforce development partners in the region, created this industry advisory group, if you will, and through that multi-year collaboration recently was awarded a federal grant to develop what is now called the Intech Center. And it's providing training in manufacturing and logistics for the entire region. And it's a shining example of how industry and educators and the workforce development system can partner together and collaborate for a successful outcome. However, it is not the norm. And so that is what we hope to be able to create and remove barriers in the system so that can be a model that can be successfully duplicated. Just real quickly, this same company and their HR manager is very involved with the manufacturing and distribution logistics field in that area, and is also part of an organization that's over 100 HR professionals in that area, in this industry area. Here is just a sampling of some of the things that when he did an informal survey of these HR professionals, what they're seeing in candidates who are applying for very good middle-class jobs with career mobility in manufacturing. The candidates have never done anything manual. Like they have never worked on a car, they've never cleaned the house or mowed the lawn, they've never put together IKEA furniture. So these are individuals who don't. Yes, yes.
Might be different.
And this next bar I don't even meet. They don't know how to read a tape measure. I don't know how to read a tape measure. My husband bought me a tape measure for dummies that has all the like little, marks on it, so I actually know what I'm doing. But they don't have any mechanical aptitude. They have poor math and problem-solving skills. They don't show up to interviews on time, if they show up at all. And when they don't show up, they don't call, they don't text, they don't email. During the interviews, they don't have good interpersonal skills, so they can't really talk about themselves and why they're interested in the job or the company for that matter. They don't make eye contact, they don't shake hands, and they use casual communication like bro and hey dude. If they're hired, they don't work well with other employees that have different perspectives or viewpoints. They don't manage criticism or disappointment well, and they often take offense when when they're being given direction on how to perform the job correctly. So it's kind of this kind of know-it-all mentality. So
You talk about the millennials, or?
But it's the culture of the candidates who are out there. And so part of that is on our end as an industry to help, kind of inform what it is that a person who's ready for the world of work needs to have, the characteristics and interpersonal skills. So that's internships can do that, on-the-job training opportunities can do that. But it's also behooved on education to start, preparing students. If that, and I'll leave it with this last point, if the real goal of education is to prepare students for the world of work, then we need to start rethinking about how we deliver education. If the goal is just higher degrees of attainment in education, then perhaps the system doesn't need any changes. And that's a policy decision that needs to be made by legislators such as yourself.
But I would say it needs to, as Scott said, and but, and or, because I don't think it should be one or the other, right? I mean, people go to a four-year degree program and discover humanities, right? Discover culture, discover all kinds of things that expands their world. I don't think we want to create systems in which we're just creating workers to fix widgets, right? I mean, It needs to be much more than that. And I think we need to pay attention to workforce development in very significant ways that parallel our economy. So I think it should be both.
Yes.
I think the panelists have done a great job of showing, the diverse needs of the state of California's workforce, and therefore the challenge to the state of California, going all the way from very technical, medical, and I'm very happy that UC Riverside is partnering with Kaiser Permanente. The state of California, a few years back, 5 years ago, funded the UCR School of Medicine, $15 million ongoing to meet those primary care doctors that that we have mostly in the inland California, including Riverside and Central Valley, and making sure that program is diverse, and making sure that those doctors coming out meet the diversity of the patients in our area. I'm also the representative most close to Chaffee Community College, and as a community college trustee, 15 years, and someone who got to visit CSI, Steel, I know what a great program that is. Nicole, you said that we should embrace the delineation of missions to each part, which at the beginning we said has been blurring. It sounded like you said that each each segment should do that which it does best. And certainly in the areas that you're talking about, programs like CSI Steel with Chaffee, they do that best. So you think, Nicole, a question, that rather than mixing the missions, we should go back to seeing what the original missions were?
I think that's a start. And I'll put it this way. I agree, and I need to also put the disclaimer that college and career readiness is something that is an approach that works well for our higher education system. And that even in our field, we have positions that need four-year degrees. And so I do agree that there are segments of the system that do their roles well and should continue to do that. But there are also missions that have been adopted and embraced by other segments that should not necessarily be abandoned. And that the goal that seems to have taken effect with the requirements and the standards of UC becoming where everyone's pointing and looking at should not be the end game. That where in community colleges there's a transfer mission, yes, there's basic skills, but there is also their vocational mission. CSU also has a career preparation for certain industries, and I'd love to see them look and expand in other industries where that methodology would play well in training individuals for the workforce. So I think that there is an opportunity, there should be an opportunity to look at community colleges and CSUs and see what a bigger role that they can play in a mission that was already granted to them through the master plan, and just not look at, again, the attainment of the UC, reaching that goal being the full definition of success for education, especially for middle skills jobs.
You also touched upon the role of business and industry in providing internships, giving students the practical knowledge, the hands-on stuff that you talked about, the measuring tape. What can industry and business do more to do those kind of things like CSI Steel? How can IBM, how can Kaiser Permanente give more of those kind of opportunities to our students?
Yeah, sure. I'll start there. You know, we actually have a pretty robust internship program that we've offered. We've you know, also moved into the non-clinical space. Of course, we have a lot of student clinical rotations that go through Kaiser Permanente, as you would imagine. But about 5 or 6 years ago, we started going out to schools, San Jose State is among them, where we'll come and actually try to recruit their IT students. And so, you know, just helping folks understand that every industry, regardless of where they are, requires a workforce with a very diverse set of skills. And so providing those real-life opportunities, you know, we think is vital. To Nicole's point, a lot of students don't come, you know, completely prepared for, you know, the sort of non-academic elements of work. So how you run a project is a good example, right? How you manage a team, how you stick to a guideline, showing up well. Those seem like pretty fundamental elements, but in oftentimes they're really not. And those are things that I would underscore as strongly as possible, because that helps ensure that folks who are academically prepared are really well informed and able to go out and contribute in a meaningful way as quickly as possible. So we're doing a lot in the internship space. We would absolutely encourage every organization and industry to keep doing that, or to get into that space if they're not already doing that. As much as they could, because it certainly supplements the academic education that students are getting. So we think it's vital.
I had the opportunity 2 years ago to meet with Secretary of Labor Perez, and one of the things that we talked about was the jobs and what they're training people for nowhere near matching what the workforce is needed today. I know IBM is working with the U.S. federal government to help update those systems and make sure that there is a faster connection between the job openings we have, the skills required, and what we're training or retraining individuals to have the ability to do. It's upon our industry to make sure that we're communicating very clearly. We feel like we are, but back to some points that were made earlier, we've got to embrace the entire education system from beginning to end here. And it's not all about getting the 4-year degree. And that's something that I would employ all of you to think about as you're doing these committee hearings. But that gap there in the middle of individuals that can have specific training. Take cybersecurity, for example. We have an example of an individual, a female, who came back from the military looking for a living wage to be able to support her family, but not able to go and get a 4-year degree to afford 4 years of not being in the workforce. She was able to go through a new collar opportunity retraining program and is now a security specialist at IBM after a 2-year certification degree. That's just one example of a type of job. Now, we have the need for, I work at our research facility, I'm an engineer myself, and a San Jose State graduate. But understanding where the different jobs fit, and it's not just, the end game isn't just a 4-year or a master's degree.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I want to ask the flip side to the question, because Dr. Eggman referred to it. Our president here, Dr. Papazian, and the president of UC California are both professors of English. And so that goes to the graph that we looked at, and where we saw more students majoring in business, majoring in STEM. I think you're the only panel that we have in front of us that are going to be from business, from employers. Why is it important for business? Why is it important that we continue to graduate students in liberal arts and the humanities? Why is it important to business? Do we not need any more English and poli-sci and history majors?
We absolutely need all different disciplines in industry. I'll share something very personal with you. So when I was at San Jose State, I was an engineering student. I was not able to actually graduate with an engineering degree because the program was so impacted here. I was married, I was starting a family, I was expecting my first child, and so I ended up switching over to the School of Business and getting a degree in marketing. It was a practical reason why I had to do that, because I could not get the classes that I had to get to complete. Did that impede my ability to go on and be an engineer? IBM, trained me and said, okay, pass these tests, we'll give you a job, and they did. But I've always been under the notion that different disciplines are needed, whether it's high tech or education. I hire art students to be technical support specialists in IBM because they have this ability to do spatial reasoning. And I think part of this is not only making sure that our education system matches what the needs are, but re-educating business leaders to get away from the stigma that unless you have a master's degree, you're not qualified to work for me. So it's on both ends of that spectrum there that we need to do this.
It's a good question. I heard somebody who was asked recently, how's the job market for students? And the response was, it depends on the student. So I think a lot of it does depend on the individual. There's no doubt that there is significant increases, and we're seeing the same thing within STEM-related career fields and educational disciplines. So that certainly is a trajectory that I believe will continue, and every report that we read and that we're experiencing would indicate that is true. That being said, there is certainly a wide range of occupations out there, and we need folks who have various disciplines to enter the workforce. And so, we found your personal situation to be very true at KP as well. We have a lot of folks that will have an academic discipline and a particular background and are able to get in because of interest or a certain aptitude into certain roles that might generally require a technical degree, and they do very well. So I think a lot of it is individual, but no doubt there's certainly an increasing interest in STEM-related disciplines.
And I'm not sure that the question is, or should be, why one discipline versus another. I think we certainly see ourselves as consumers or kind of the end user of the education system, but also the student is. And I think what education should be about exploration for individuals and finding your place in the world. So the education experience should create options and on-ramps and off-ramps for students so that they can explore what their aptitudes are and then determine what is the best course of action. I don't think I want to necessarily tell
one individual that this is the right path. I want the system to be so robust in its provision that the student will have an opportunity at every milestone to be able to determine which pathway they want to choose. And then that way, I think they'll feel most fulfilled at the end of the experience, whether they choose industry, whether they choose education, or whether they choose a different pursuit.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Really appreciated the points and the conversation. Thank you. And so our last panel this morning will be on addressing workforce needs. And I'd like to bring up and introduce Barbara Barron, co-director of California Edge Coalition, Dr. Alma Salazar, Senior Vice President of the Center for Education Excellence and Talent Development at the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and Josue Garcia, if Josue's here. I know he's going to be a minute late. So Josue Garcia will be joining us, who's the Executive Director of the San Benito Santa Clara County Building Trades.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for joining us.
Well, the advantage or disadvantage of being the last panel is that what I'm going to talk about will be reiterating a lot of what you've already heard this morning, and I actually think that's a good thing. I want to, and also, given the conversation we were just having, say that my undergraduate degree was in European intellectual history. But I will be talking to you. I am, as you just heard, co-director of the California Edge Coalition. We're a coalition of business, labor, community organizations, workforce organizations, community college organizations that came together about a decade ago, recognizing that the skills of the California workforce, the future of California depends on the skills of its workforce. And so I want to also talk about what Nicole, who is on my board, and so is Elma, was middle skill jobs. Our focus has been middle school jobs, which, as she said, are jobs that require a considerable amount of post-high school education and training, but not necessarily a baccalaureate degree. And so given that that's been our focus, we have a series of recommendations that we would bring to you. And the first, which I think was a plea that Nicole was making, is sort of has to do with the place of career education in our overall education, higher education system. California appropriately prides itself on having the most extensive and one of the most effective public education systems in the nation, and also among the most diverse student bodies. But for a set of really complex historical reasons, our state has tended to undervalue career education compared to numbers of other states. And so moving forward, we really think, as Nicole just said, that it's critical that California honor as a core mission of higher education, career education programs, and that we ensure that the funding streams for those programs are adequate and reliable. High-quality CTE programs are often quite expensive, but they also pay big benefits in terms of the salaries that graduates are able to obtain. But a lot of those programs, for way too long, have depended on erratic grant-based funding to sustain them. And so we really need to make sure that the funding is both of adequate size and regular and reliable. We also need to ensure that the implementation of policy takes into account what the impact on career tech programs is likely to be. And a really good example is the Edge Coalition is thrilled. Londe was talking about Chancellor Oakley and the community colleges beginning to move and embrace a really rewiring of their system that is being called guided pathways. And we think that couldn't be more important. That said, we have a series of concerns about ways in which implementation of guided pathways could have unintended consequences, negative consequences on career programs. On the one hand, it could be the best thing that ever happened to them. On the other hand, if we're not thoughtful about the needs, special needs of career tech programs, it could have unintended consequences. Third, that you also heard the last panel talk about, we think that it's important to increase our investment in workplace-based learning. And I know Jeremy, who was going to be here, would have talked about that. Earning while you learn is both one way of addressing the real financial barriers a lot of students face, but it also, lots of people find it a more effective way to learn. So we'd like to see a sort of growth and extension, and that, of course, involves closer integration with the employer community. So, and that gets to our second recommendation. We really think that in order to ensure that it's important to ensure the relevance of career ed. And for the past decade, policymakers have been trying to be responsive to the needs of California's very different regional economies. And one outcome has been a proliferation of legislatively mandated regional bodies. And unfortunately, many of them have failed to effectively engage business and labor. And in fact, the profusion of the tables at which industry and labor are expected to sit, I think, has become a problem in and of itself. And so we need to sort of think about how we can also address the structural barriers that continue to exist despite consortium after consortium that we have out there, supposedly bringing together educational segments and educational institutions. I think the structural barriers to them working well together remain pretty deep, and so moving forward, we need to continue, I think, our regional focus. We need to continue to focus on high demand sectors, as we've heard, but we also need to do a better job creating viable vehicles for industry engagement. I think Alma's going to talk about an exciting one, and you heard some just in the last panel. Our third recommendation has to do with eliminating key barriers to student access, progress, and success. And you heard our first panel talking a lot about the fact that we really need to up our game in terms of getting folks out the other end. Community colleges have the lowest tuition of any in the nation, and frankly, as everyone knows, are tuition free for most students that have any kind of financial need. Yet a recent TICA study found that the net cost to attend a community college is actually greater than to attend either the CSU or UC systems, and it's because community college students are much less likely to be able to access the kind of financial aid that also pays for cost of living, which everyone knows is particularly high in California. The majority of community college students, and I'm not sure whether it's a majority or almost a majority of CSU students, also face serious educational barriers. Today, roughly 80% of community college students test into remediation, and only a tiny fraction of those make it out the other end with any meaningful certificate, degree, or transfer. And finally, as you heard Londe talking about, navigating the educational system is a huge problem for many students, which is why so many, particularly community college students, rack up way more credits than they need to, and frankly are wandering around dazed and confused a lot, and huge numbers of them just drop out. So we think that California needs to provide a debt-free pathway for all students to make it through college and ensure that CTE students have access to those financial supports, and whether that means rethinking the Cal Grant C system or rethinking Cal Grant system period. We think we need to look hard at that. We think we need to, and the EDGE Coalition's been working for a long time on, we need to eliminate the remedial education sinkhole that, just swallows up so many of our students by changing placement policies and by implementing evidence-based practices that we all know will get students through without any remedial education or a minimal remedial education and the kinds of other supports that they need. We need to significantly expand our navigational assistance to students. We also need, as somebody, I forget who talked about, we really need to create pathways to institutions, so from K-12 and so on, and through institutions. And I wanted to sort of say that one of the systems that we've spent a lot of time caring about is the adult education system, which is actually mentioned in the master plan, but sort of in passing, and is really sort of uneasily co-governed right now between CTE and the Chancellor's Office. So we really need to pathways from K-12 to the community colleges, from adult ed into the community colleges, through to the CSUs and so on. And then last, I will just sort of repeat Hans's plea that our educational systems need shared vision and meaningful data. California is just shamefully lags the rest of the nation in terms of our ability to track students through the educational system and make any sense out of what's working, what's not working. So we're sort of making policy by anecdote these days rather than using the evidence that the rest of the nation is doing. So moving forward, we need to establish ambitious outcome and equity goals, and we have to put in place the kind of data longitudinal cross-system longitudinal data systems we need to track.
Thank you, Barbara. Dr. Salazar.
Well, good afternoon, or good morning, I believe, still. Assembly members, delighted to be with you here today. Just again, by way of introduction, Alma Salazar, Senior Vice President for the Center for Education Excellence and Talent Development at the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. I have the privilege of working for an organization that represents 1,600 member companies in the LA Basin. So I definitely want to echo many of the sentiments and remarks made by the prior panel and by Barbara. As a business organization, and I would say largely an intermediary, I have the good fortune of being trilingual. I speak business, education, and workforce, and that is definitely an acquired skill set. But nonetheless, incredibly needed in this day and age, particularly as we try to address many of these issues that have been brought forth today. I first want to kind of set a context, and I think I want to point to some of the things that we've done well, particularly over the last several years in California. And because, I have an opportunity to interface with many of these employers, I think what Nicole said and our partners from IBM and Kaiser reiterated, and I think Assemblymember Medina, to your question earlier, the absolute need to ensure that our young adults, when they leave our educational system, irrespective of whether they choose a middle skill occupation or whether they choose a 4-year degree, our employers have been very clear from the onset that it is both the combination of strong academic skills as well as strong career technical education skills that is really providing a well-rounded workforce. So I subscribe to the notion that the two are not mutually exclusive. If you choose a liberal arts degree, even within your chosen career profession, you're going to need those applied skills to be successful. I will point to specifically 2 areas where I've seen not only embracing that notion, but also more importantly, one thing in that I would implore the committee to really think deeply about is recognizing that if we're really going to address these issues, particularly around issues of equity, that we really need to look holistically at the P20 continuum. And it is the interdependence between early ed, K-12, higher ed, workforce development that is absolutely paramount if we are really going to make any headway. And I say this in part because I believe that, I should acknowledge I'm a state workforce development board member. I was very involved in the development of our statewide strategic plan. And I think what gave me solace in recognizing that as we try to address many of the workforce issues within our system, that I think for the first time, at least in my short career, we did see the Department of Education, the community colleges, the workforce development boards, many of our public social service systems, corrections, all working together to try to address some of these workforce issues, particularly around our most vulnerable populations. Secondly, I also have the good fortune to work with California Forward on its California Economic Summit, focused around ensuring that we have 1 million more individuals with industry value credentials. That convening will happen over the next 2 days, but really focused around how do we ensure that we're doing more within and across our systems to begin to address these issues. So I just would implore that as we look at the master plan for California, that we take into consideration its interdependence to these other systems and how it will interplay and not create potentially superficial barriers that create stumbling blocks for many of our young adults. I also want to give kudos to the California Community College system, who I think has really has been receptive to and through the strong workforce initiative has really begun to respond to the needs of employers and to be much more focused around how do we become much more demand driven. And I want to point to a regional best practice, getting back to the regional best practices, around where we're starting to see some of that good work begin to happen. And just earlier this year, the LA Chamber, in partnership with the LA Economic Development Corporation, the Southern California Leadership Council, the Center for Education Excellence, and the 19 LA community colleges launched what's called the Center for a Competitive Workforce. And the whole notion of the Center for a Competitive Workforce is really focused around how do we begin to put together the architecture system to really have a continuous feedback loop between our community colleges and our business and industry partners so that we are being much more intentional about meeting business and industry needs. The focus of the center is around 3 core pillars of work. The first is looking specifically at research and analysis. While I think many of us have seen in several different iterations what the demand side of our regional economies, what is driving labor needs in our region, oftentimes what we don't know is what's the supply side look like? How is it that our community colleges, in this particular instance, and I'll elaborate that in a moment, is able to produce the labor force that our employers are seeking? And how are we not only ensuring and in strengthening that alignment, but also being able to be clear about where those gaps exist? So actually, the center just in the last few weeks released its first report illustrating what the top 20 occupations are in the LA basin, coupled with how our colleges are providing that supply side for our employers. The second pillar of work will focus specifically on the formation and engagement of 6 industry councils. These are the 6 industries that are in high demand in the LA region, ranging from health services, information technology, aerospace, bioscience, advanced transportation, entertainment and digital media arts. and I always forget one. It'll come to me. So there's 6 councils that will bring business and industry leaders together to provide that continuous feedback loop that will guide the community colleges, not only in validating this industry data, but also being able to get to competencies and skills that are required within these occupations, as well as help guide curriculum models that then the community colleges can use moving forward. And the third last pillar of work is really focused around how do we systematize and begin to provide those business industry partnerships so that the colleges themselves are being able to interface directly with our employers to provide those work-based learning opportunities, internships, things that are going to help bring learning to life for our young adults. I did not get to my recommendations, but I'll go ahead and pause there.
Thank you.
You're
All.
welcome.
We'll kind of prompt you during Q&A.
Please.
And I'd like to introduce Josue Garcia. Jeremy Smith from the State Building Trades was scheduled to be here today and reached out yesterday to say he was ill. And so at about 4:30 yesterday afternoon, I called Josue and said, hey, what are you up to tomorrow morning? So thank you for filling in a pinch. I would love to hear about what's happening on the ground with some of your members and what's working out well.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. And you explained the reasons why I was late. I had to move my schedule around. And thank you very much for having me, by the way. It's always a pleasure to talk about construction and opportunities in construction. My name is Josue Garcia. I am the CEO for the Building and Construction Trades Council, and that is nothing more than 26 construction unions. And I cover Santa Clara County, Santa Clara and San Bernardino counties. We have over 30,000 members that I represent. I started my career as a roofer, and now I'm the CEO. So when people ask me if I started at the bottom, I go, no, I started at the top as a roofer. So that's how I started, right at the top. That's how you do it. When I was invited, and I knew about the meeting, and when I was invited and I read the title, Higher Education, most people don't think that in construction we are highly educated, and not only educated, but highly trained. We just finished this building, I think a year or maybe a little bit longer than a year ago. And if you walk around, look at the details, it's a beautiful building, and then obviously you don't see that behind the scenes or behind the sheetrock. We have to put things together in a very organized way, very technical. Just in Santa Clara County, well, we've been training for generations, for decades. Just in Santa Clara County, we spent over $15 million a year training our 35 men and women in the construction industry. That's money that comes from us. That's money that doesn't come from any government agency. That's our money that we keep reusing to retrain ourselves. We get entry-level people, men and women, and then we bring them through the apprenticeship programs. We go to school for 5 years, 2 nights a week, and we don't mess around. If you miss one night, you're out, because we have to be very professional about it. We train all the way from how to empty garbage cans, because people have to learn how to do that, and there's nothing wrong with it, all the way to reading blueprints, CAD programs with computers, and how to manage projects, how to do estimates, how to do many different things. In the industry, more and more, we are seeing the need for more training. We do the technical training, that using the tools. We do that, as I explained. We have training centers throughout the state, actually. But we need, and we see this more and more, that we need more training in between management and labor. Because we have the construction workers, blue-collar workers, and then you have the management, the architects, and the engineers with white collar. So we think that in construction, at least in construction, if maybe in more industries, you need to have a lighter shade of blue and a darker shade of white. Because of technology, we are using technology more and more. And then, of course, we do that training with the tools and how to measure and all those things, but we also need other technical skills. And to learn those skills, right now we are partnering with the 3 colleges in my area anyway, Foothill, De Anza College District, San Jose Evergreen, and West Valley Mission College District. They are working on what they called, and we requested stackable credentials, because we go to school for 5 years, and by the way, every time we go to school, we are earning college credits at the same time. So because we go to school for 5 years, I cannot go to a journey level person and say congratulations, you just finished 5 years, can you take another 4 years? And the answer will be no, thank you very much. Now I'm starting to have a family and all these things. So we are thinking about stackable credentials, can be 3 months, 6 months, and then they can take them as they have time and stack them up. And at some point have a college degree, a university degree. So we are doing that. We, in the building trades, have a nonprofit arm that is in charge of getting construction into education all the way from K to 12 and colleges, and then bringing education into the industry. So we go to the classrooms, and teachers and school personnel comes to the construction industry so they can learn what we do and how we do it. And so we are learning from each other. And I think that's been very successful. Just to give you an idea, in the summertime, we hire interns, paid internships for high school students, and they make more than the minimum wage. One thing that I have learned from these students, that some of the students want the money to go to the mall and go to the movies and buy an iPhone. I just threw a commercial there. But I'm sponsored by I will not say the name anymore. But some students actually want the money to help mom and dad with food and rent. And I learned that throughout managing these programs, and I go, oh, that's very cool. Just to finish up my presentation here, I'll share a story from a mom that came to me one time. We had a career fair, a hands-on career fair. And she said, Mr. Garcia, are you the person in charge? I go, yeah, how can I help? And she said, well, I have 2 kids. I have this kid right here with glasses, and he loves school, homework, and he just loves school. And I have that little kid having fun with the sparks of a grinder. He says, I was concerned, I know he's going to have a college degree and be successful, but what is this other kid going to do? And he said, now I know what he's going to do. And you can imagine how my parents felt when I told them, hey, I want to be a roofer. And now that they see me as the CEO, they say, well, you made the right choice. I was talking to a group of 300 parents and kids at Alum Rock School District, and I told them, I was talking to the kids, and I told them, listen, you have to do everything mom and dad tell you to do. And the parents were, yeah. If mom and dad tell you to pick up your shirt, you pick up your shirt. If you have to take the garbage out, you take it. All these things. And I became the parents' hero, right? Oh, man, finally, Josue for governor, yeah, for president. And then I said this, listen to them, except when it comes to your future, do what you think you are called to do for. And if your destiny is construction, go for construction because it's very rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you, Josue.
Well, I feel fortunate to have been here to hear the 5th candidate for governor of the state of California. And we heard it here this morning at San Jose State.
I'll use it to announce my candidacy. I'm raising money starting right now.
And there's a lot to be said for starting at the top. But seriously, I think it points out, the diverse needs of the state of California, and how we need to train all our students, all our young people, because we need them all at every level. Just one quick question to Barbara. You mentioned and I think as we look at the completion rate in community colleges and CSU, big stumbling blocks for college kids. The legislation that we just passed at both CSU and community college, your comments? Getting rid of getting rid of remediation for CSU and allowing community colleges to do more than just one test to determine their placement.
We were so down with that. No, I think I meant to say, but was speeding to keep it to my 7 minutes. A couple of things about, I pointed out a lot of the problems. I want to echo what you just heard about the kind of progress that's been made. So 10 years ago, when the Edge Coalition started pounding away about remediation, we really felt like a voice in the wilderness here. That's been a sea change. I mean, clearly in the Capitol now, people understand that we have a real problem and are pretty savvy about what the solutions are, which I think is exciting. The same thing in terms of career ed. I was saying that we as a state have undervalued it. And whenever the Student Success Task Force was, when was that, 5 years ago? 2008. Two major topics were remarkably not taken up. One was remediation, and the second one was career tech in any way. But as you all know, that was remedied, and 4 members of the Edge Coalition, actually including me, sat on the Board of Governors, a CT task force, and strong workforce task force, right? And the Chancellor's office has been, for the last 8 years or whatever, for a long time, really pounding away on sort of improving our offerings in career tech, on lifting its profile up. And since those task force recommendations, I think the Chancellor's office has made a really serious effort to begin to implementation of some of them. Some of them are more complicated than others, as you know. But so, I mean, I really think that so the plea on our part is not to say that nothing good is going on, but to say we're on a roll and 10 years ago, when I sort of said we started talking about remediation, for example, the fact of the matter was that we didn't know what worked. I mean, we knew we had a real problem, but we, the royal we, all across the country, weren't sure what the most effective solutions are. I mean, I really think, and we're still refining it more and more, of course. But on many of these fronts, we're getting a lot smarter, and I think that we need to just keep on top of it. And as Hans said, frankly, just to repeat myself, we need the data, because through the data, we really are able to figure out which of these interventions are more or less effective. And because otherwise we really are just, making up policy based on whoever tells the best story,
Alma, I want to give you the opportunity to hit on some of the other points that you want to touch on.
Sure, and many of which have already been mentioned today, but I definitely think are worthy of being even further accentuated. I think to Hans' point, to the degree that we are able to develop or create a state-level coordinating entity, and I would say in part also to support many of the regional efforts that are currently occurring that have already begun to be fomented through the Workforce Development Board Strategic Plan, through the Community College Strong Workforce. I think recognizing that there's a lot of good regional work happening, and how do we continue to double down on it and support it, so that it is not only bringing business and industry to the table, as my colleagues from the prior panel referenced, but it is working across systems to begin to address these issues. I think also exploring ways in which we can support investments in these efforts, in which not only incentivize coordination and collaboration, but also maybe exploring, investments in sector partnerships where we are being much more industry driven. We can't emphasize enough the need for a longitudinal data system, whether that be at the state or at the very least ways in which we could, again, support the work that's happening at the regional level. And then I would make one last pitch, and I think my colleagues, again, from the prior panel touched upon this, but somehow when we ask employers repeatedly, what is it that they seek? And that it always comes back to the same thing: foundational skills, essential skills. And I think we take for granted that somehow that is somehow organically taught. And I would ask that we really look at ways in which we are assessing how young adults are mastering those competencies and how they're able to demonstrate those competencies, because irrespective of occupation, industry, it is absolutely paramount to their success.
Thank you. And Josue, a quick question for you. We have a housing crisis in California. The state has passed a series of bills to begin trying to address it, as well as transportation infrastructure. We're going to be doing a lot of building over the next couple of decades. What do you see in terms of, do we have, you mentioned that you oversee 30,000 employees. Is that enough? Do we need more, to meet the needs that we have? And are there some challenges there?
Yes, the answer is no. We don't have enough people. We need more for sure. And just in Santa Clara County, and you see that buildings going up, high-tech companies have become developers. Yeah. So that adds more to the workload. We don't have enough, and not only construction workers. We need more construction workers, but we also need the middle management that I mentioned earlier. What I hear from contractors and from developers, they call me, Josue, I need a contractor to do this project. So I call contractors, can you give this person a bid? And they said, no, because I don't have workers. I go, I can provide that work. I can train the workers. And they said, no, I'm talking about the middle management. That's why we came up with the idea of stackable credentials, so we can bring that journey level person that we trained to the second level. Because if we don't have the middle management, even if we have the workers, if the funding is there, nobody's going to manage these projects, so projects don't come out the ground. Yeah. So yeah, if anything that we can do to help the middle management part.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Yes, please.
One last plea. I said this in my testimony, but I would really be thrilled if this committee would see within its purview adult education as well as what we traditionally think of as higher education, because adult education really is adult. It's post-secondary, and it's been forever kind of an orphan in our system, I think. And no matter where, I mean, whether we place it with the community colleges, it's not their core mission. We put it in the K-12, it's not their core mission. And I do think other states, not lots of other states, but other states are doing a better job than we are in terms of integrating it. And it is a critical pathway in for so many Californians. And it has a complex set of missions itself. But anyway, I urge you guys to keep it in your, as part of your work.
No, that's a great point.
And if I can add, any help that anybody can give us getting into high school, junior highs and high school, so we can start talking to kids at an earlier age. Yeah. We are fighting the parent mentality that construction is not a good career, but it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Thank you to everybody on the third panel. So we now is the opportunity for public comment, and I know that some of my colleagues, at least one of my colleagues, has to leave to catch a flight. So let me just say now, thank you both so much for coming from Riverside, for coming from Stockton to participate in today's panel, and my colleagues who were here earlier and had to run off to other obligations. But thank you very much for taking the time to be on the select committee and for taking it so seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've allotted 15 minutes for public comment. I will stay until everyone is done. But if people can keep their comments as brief as possible. That would be great because we want to hear from everybody. And also, please feel free to reach out to my legislative director, Ellen Green, who is the point person for my select committee on the master plan. If you send Ellen an email, she can add you to the list so you're kept in the loop on the progress that we're making and on future hearings. So we're happy to hear from you and happy to discuss our efforts. So we have a sign-in sheet, so we're going to go by the sign-in sheet that I have. And first up is Dr. Michael Kirst, who's a Stanford University Professor Emeritus of Education and also President of the California State Board of Education. Dr. Kirst, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm appearing as my professorial position at Stanford University, where I just completed a book called Higher Education in the Silicon Valley, Connected but Conflicted. This is a very deep study since 1970 of the relationship between the changing economy in the entire 7-county Bay Area and the colleges and institutions. And what we see here is a very rapid turnover, particularly for adults, and I want to reinforce Barbara's comments about this, where the economy changes so quickly that there is so much need for adult education, and the master plan never really thought about this in any depth, and I think you're going to have to face that and study that. The second point that has not come up at all today, we found in the 7-county Bay Area 350 institutions of post-secondary education. I call them entities, perhaps. We included, of course, truck driver schools, beauty colleges, but many of them that serve the technical area. Of those 350 institutions in the Bay Area, 30 are public schools. So that leaves 320 private institutions out there. Only a third of the institutions that are operating out there, mostly in the adult education space, are in the federal database called IPEDS. A lot of them are just springing up everywhere. That's because the supply of education for adults in the 7-county Bay Area does not equal the demand, and there's all these private institutions, for-profit and non-profit, filling in behind them. So I think what you need to do is think about we probably can't afford to double the space of San Jose State or the community colleges, and we need to think about then how you're going to leverage and understand this non-public higher education sector, heavily serving adults between 25 and 55, how you're going to include that in the master plan and make up for the thinking that is not in the current master plan about this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for submitting comments also in writing ahead of time that we all received. They're in our packets. Judy Miner, Chancellor of the Foothill De Anza Community College District. Hi, Judy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for holding this hearing. You saw a slide that showed 16 states that offer more degrees than California. They are among the 23 states in the country that authorize their community colleges to offer baccalaureate degrees. And so I would hope that in the long term, as you are developing the master plan, you think about the appropriate expansion of the community college role in career technical education programs that are not otherwise offered by any of our public entities in California. And in the short term, I would hope that you would also consider supporting the legislation that Jerry Hill will reintroduce in the upcoming session for us to extend the sunset date for the current pilot and to expand the pilot in the community colleges. You may recall that one of the slides that Hans showed indicated even with the efforts underway to increase the number of baccalaureates to be awarded, we're probably going to be looking at nearly 900,000 baccalaureates as a shortfall. The 2.1 million students in the California community colleges can certainly be an essential group to contribute to closing that gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Maureen O'Connor, President of Palo Alto University.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate being here. The private nonprofit universities represent about 25% of all undergraduates and about 52% of our graduate students in the state. So we please want to be included. We are delighted to have been included In the last 12 years at Palo Alto University, which is a specialized, unique niche university where we specialize in psychology and counseling and mental health, in all of the discussions you've had today, if the workers are not mental health is not addressed, behavioral health is not addressed, then none of the work that you do will succeed. So we feel a very, very important niche. And most of our students are coming from California and are staying in California. So we're just delighted to be part of it, and please keep our sector in mind as you do your work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. David Poulter from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
Chair Berman, thank you for holding this hearing here in Silicon Valley, and to President Papazian and the San Jose State University students that are here, thank you for hosting us. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group and its 400 member companies is committed to expanding economic opportunity and to diversifying the STEM pipeline in Silicon Valley. In keeping with these goals and what we've learned today, we hope that this committee will consider the following legislative options to better align industry and higher education. First, encourage curricula coordination within and between the 3 tiers of our higher education system so that students moving between these institutions can follow clearly articulated educational and training pathways. Second, and this sort of speaks to the poll of HR professionals that Nicole mentioned about applied skills, but we'd encourage you to address the institutionalized but increasingly anachronistic divide between academic and career technical education divisions. Integrate academic and CTE classes into CC and CSU departments and encourage applied learning as a foundational aspect of all curricula. And last, and of equal importance to these changes on the higher ed side, is that the committee considers incentivizing employer engagement with schools, shifting industry norms from simply, for example, hosting interns in their 3rd year at a 4-year school to working closely with students throughout the year and at every post-secondary level through apprenticeships, dual training, or similar work-based learning. Again, thank you so much for your willingness to engage in these issues and for launching this much-needed forum.
Thank you very much, David. Next up, we have Isaiah Avila de la Cruz, who's a student. I don't know if it's here at San Jose State or at another school, but I hope we'll find out.
1 second. California State University, East Bay.
There we go. All right.
Just down the street. 1 in 10, 1 in 5. Would you like to know the effects of an ineffective master plan? Like most, I worked this morning. Unlike most, I started at 2 a.m. Like most, I'm a student. Unlike most, I have 4 jobs. Like most, I commute. Unlike most, I had to commute this morning from Modesto here to San Jose just to make it, because this is how important this means to me. 4 jobs, 4 classes, straight A's. As a student parent, my priority is my daughter. I stay focused because of her. However, it is increasingly tough to remain focused on both herself and myself when we have a growing student burden. That student burden is called debt. So let's talk about priorities for a bit. Priorities in California has seemed kind of reside along the prison industrial complex. We've seen 23 prisons spawn since 1980, as opposed to only 1 UC during that same time period. Where is California's priorities? We've seen a shift of the state away from students and more towards things like prison. 1 in 10, 1 in 5, I mentioned that number earlier. 1 in 10 students in the CSU system are homeless. 1 in 5 students don't have enough food to eat, including myself. As a matter of fact, on my campus, we created a food pantry to help lessen the effects that this growing student burden has had on our population. As you see, we have grave consequences when we don't prioritize our students. It brings up an important moral question. This question is, how moral is it to let our students starve, our future starve, when our state is so obese in its wealth? Not only does it make sense to not let students starve, but it makes sense, and yes, I'm talking dollars. Our studies have shown that for every $1 that we invest into the CSU, we receive $5 back in taxpayer money. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. Some of you may invest in the room, I do. I'm no Warren Buffett, but 5-to-1 return is pretty awesome. So I have a question. What excuse do we have not to invest in our future, not to invest in our workforce, not to invest in the intelligence of our students?
If you could just wrap it up, I'd very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's promote education, not allow starvation. The master plan has been dead. Let's bring it back to life. Free higher education for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. And let me briefly take the opportunity to say those were some very good points, and we're going to be having one whole hearing on student needs, and a lot of the issues that you brought up are going to be discussed there, and we'll make sure if we get your information that you know when we're going to be having that hearing and where. And then the last hearing is going to be talking about budgetary issues, including the cost of higher education. So just because we didn't talk about those issues today doesn't mean that we won't be, because those are very important issues that we'll be addressing as a part of the select committee. So thank you for bringing those up. Erica Diaz, also a student.
Hello, my name is Erica Diaz. I'm a student here at SJSU. I'm a second year, and sorry, this is like my first time talking.
Thank you for coming.
So much of this discussion is focusing on building the workforce beyond graduation. However, we're not seeming to focus on one of the roots of the issue, which is approaching this from like a student debt lens. And so like the reality is that students are too focused on paying off their student debt after graduation, and we need to get back to the master plan and not continue to normalize student debt and high tuition. Last year, it was my first year in college, and I was receiving the maximum financial aid I can get. But however, I still had to take out 2 student loans, and my parents couldn't help me because they were making under $12,000 a year. So yeah, so that pretty much like stressed me out a lot, and it was just my first year in college, so I was still trying to like figure out all the like things I had to do, and so I'm just here today just to express my concern and my support for the master plan, specifically in regards to free higher education, because I feel once we stop like really worrying about like paying off our tuition, we can start like focusing on building our career skills, because that will allow us to be like less focused on like, you know, other things we shouldn't be stressed about. So I'm actually a representative of SQE here on campus, and we're having a student speak out outside after this whole event. So you are all invited to come, and thank you.
Thank you, Erica. And next up, we have Thomas Vu from AICCU, and I do not know what that stands for. I probably should.
No worries, I'll clarify that. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Thomas Vu, and I'm with the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities.
Of course.
We are the organizational voice for 78 private nonprofit colleges and universities in the state. And our president, Kristen Soares, testified before the first committee hearing a couple months ago. As discussions around the master plan continue, we ask that you keep in mind that the independent higher education sector has long been a partner to the state, especially around issues of access for low-income students and in workforce development. We play a key role in providing capacity and access both locally and statewide. This is particularly important as the UC and the CSU continue to have issues of overcapacity at their institutions, and the state continues to have a shortage of workers in key fields, as was mentioned, in education, healthcare, and STEM. Together, our institutions educate over 187,000 undergraduate students, or about 22% of all undergraduates in the state, as President O'Connor mentioned, and over 152,000 graduate students, making the sector the leader in producing the state's advanced workforce. I just want to hit on one last point. The topics of access and workforce are tied, and as mentioned by California Competes and PPIC, we need to improve access for the state to be able to reach its its goals in workforce development. The sector educates over 27,000 Cal Grant students, and these are students from low-income families. The state needs to produce every single baccalaureate degree that it can get, so it behooves the state to invest in these students and to help them attend a private nonprofit institution, especially as the public institutions are having capacity issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And next up, we have Elena, I think it's Yick, from the League of Women Voters of California.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Eleanor Yick, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of California. And I hope to make you aware, and members of the audience, that the League recently completed a 3-year study of public higher education in California. As chair of that committee, of that 15-member committee, which represented all geographic segments of our state, I took the liberty of making a hard copy for each member of the commission up here and gave them to Ellen so she could distribute them. It was really thrilling to sit here this morning and hear so many of the issues that we addressed in our study are being represented or being spoken about by all of our speakers this morning. Our study addressed certainly the demographics of California and how different it is today than it was in 1960. We also addressed the issues of equity and access, funding and affordability, preparedness, opportunities and barriers to student success. And lastly, the study does support the idea of a coordinating body to overlook certainly our higher education system. And as someone who was in public education for 42 plus years, I do have this dream that eventually here in this state, we will look at our education system as one system, preschool through 16. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Next up, we have Catherine Abramigo, and I definitely got that wrong, from the faculty here at San Jose State University.
Hi, my name is Kathy Ramiago. I'm a faculty member here at San Jose State. I'm also the former director of the School of Nursing. I have taught here for over 32 years, so I believe in public education. I'm committed to the students, and to see the changes have been wonderful. What I want to say here is that there is evidence that shows that hospitals and institutions that provide care for our communities, those hospitals and institutions have better outcomes because of baccalaureate prepared nurses. My concern is how can we provide a streamline of transfer and education from our community college, our associate degree nurses, to the baccalaureate program. Currently, right now, we have a project with our community college, Evergreen, where in their last year as students in their nursing program, they can come and take some of the courses, so when they're finished with their associate degree, they come directly into our baccalaureate program. And it's such a wonderful class to have students from these programs. There is a trend right now that baccalaureate nurses are the type of nurses that our institutions would like to hire. And so for some of our associate degree students, they may not be hired right away, or if they are hired, the institutions will say, you need to go back and get your baccalaureate degree within 1 or 2 years. So that's a trend right now for that, so to continue that. And the opportunities also for those in these positions for leadership, diverse leadership in these institutions are a need. So that's important. And my last comment is thank you very much. Our school was involved with a pilot study for the doctorate nursing practice the past 5 years. And we are making changes. We're delivering health care in different models, and I thank you. And the bottom line is what a commitment you have, because it's going to be so important to do what's good for the state of California and our diverse communities. So thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Really appreciate that. And we've got about 10 more folks who'd like to speak. The next up is Lillian Taz from the California Faculty Association.
That's Taze, like
Excuse me,
taser?
Taze.
Hi, my name is Lillian Taze, and I'm the Political Action Chair for the California Faculty Association and a now retired faculty member from California State University, Los Angeles. We've been hearing a lot today about the fact that we're not going to have sufficient folks with bachelor's degrees. What's so ironic is that while we're falling short, we are turning away tens of thousands of qualified students. That's just not a good fit. These trends are persisting because we're not doing a good job creating access to college and making sure that anyone who is qualified can actually get in. I mean, think about it. Right now, we're going to have we're going to be short about 100,000 teachers. We've got a teacher crisis right now. Where do folks get their teaching credentials? They get them from the CSU. But all the other kinds of jobs, and I'm sort of glad to hear the discussion about STEM and liberal arts, because I'd like to see us get our heads wrapped around the idea of STEAM, not STEM, that includes the liberal arts and all of the other things that help us really make a good job of running the world. The major thing that I want to point out is that broad access to the CSU really has for generations been our state's secret weapon. This is the thing that makes the economy work so well. But over the last 30 years, the student body in the CSU has changed. We've done a paper called Equity Interrupted that has demonstrated since 1985, our student body has gotten browner. And that has happened at the same time that we have not been funding it at the same level that we were years ago. I think we have to get our heads wrapped around that and what it's going to mean to build this workforce for the future with this student body that's coming through right now. We deeply believe at CSA that higher education meets the needs of the common good, of businesses, of our society, of our body politic, and so on. And in our judgment, now is the moment where we should really be thinking of free public higher education. That is going to help us overcome the hurdle that is keeping all those wonderful minds and bodies out of our institutions and then out of our workforces. We would be delighted to work with any legislator or any business or any other coalition that is interested in meeting that goal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I do still have a bill alive that is a 1% millionaire tax to provide free higher education for the state of California.
And next up is Father Michael Ang, the president of Santa Clara University.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank all of you for serving on this commission. We recognize how important this committee is. I come from Santa Clara University, one of the 3 oldest institutions of higher education in the state of California, along with Notre Dame de Namur and from the University of the Pacific. The 3 of us started higher education in the state of California within the first 6 months that California was a state. So we've been involved in higher education from the very beginning of the state of California. We want to keep reminding the committee and those who testify that there are 4 components to the master plan for California. And the private not-for-profit sector is continually overlooked, and I want to make sure that we get, again, emphasize that we are participating. As was noted earlier, we're educating 189,000 undergraduates at present at very little cost to the state. So for every $1 we get from the state in Cal Grants, at Santa Clara we put $3.50 more in financial aid. So and that's just in one institution. You multiply that times the other 78 institutions of the state, and yet we get very little recognition for our participation in the master plan. So I'm here to put in a plug for the master plan to include then the private for higher ed. We are working to increase access. We are working to provide an educated workforce. One example, Santa Clara, we're building a new STEM facility. $275 million for a new STEM facility to benefit the Silicon Valley, and we get 0 from the state of California, nada. So I just want to make a little reminder that we are doing our part then to prepare this educated workforce. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Father Ang. And we're very happy that President Soares from AICCU participated in the first hearing, and we'll definitely keep that conversation going. Next up, I'd like to introduce Judith Gregg. Is it Gregg? Perfect. From Notre Dame de Namur University. Thank you.
As Father Ang said, Notre Dame de Namur University is one of the oldest institutions in California as well. And the thing that I'd like to call to your attention about the institution is, contrary to the perception that private nonprofit higher education is elite. Some of the institutions really are not. Let me tell you about our population. Our current freshman class, 84% are from California, 56% of them receive Pell Grants, 45% of them receive Cal Grants, 50% of them are Latino and Latina. I don't yet have the first generation statistics, but they're between 60 and 70% over the last several years. For the last couple decades, NDNU has had graduation rates for Latino and Latina students equivalent to those of our white students. So the 10-year average for 6-year graduation rate for our students is 56%. For all students in the CSUs, it's 48%. We're not happy with 56%. We're continuing to work on that, but we're proud of the work we do. We work on workforce issues. 43% of the teacher credential candidates in the state of California come through the private institutions. Of course, the CSU is huge. The independent sector is also very important as well. We've been working on adult education, non-traditional students. We had one of the early degree completion programs in California, started in 1988. And I'm sorry that Member Eggman left. We are working with the city of Tracy to try and address the workforce needs they have out there. And I just end with a reminder about the words that Landia Jose said about the cycle. Better education means better jobs, means stronger communities, and the whole cycle just continues. So thank you so much to you and the committee. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to all of this public comment, but we appreciate your public service, and thanks to San Jose State for hosting us.
Absolutely. Thank you for sticking around for the whole hearing. I appreciate that. So next up, we have Kim Guerin from Transfer APAS plus the California Faculty Association.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Kim Geron. I'm teach at Cal State East Bay. I've been there since 1999. I want to give a short faculty perspective. I'm a principal investigator for what's called a Transfer APAS, or Asian Pacific American Student Success Program. It's a Department of Education funded grant program, and our focus is on Asian Pacific Islanders who transfer from the community colleges into the CSU, and we really focus on Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander students. And I bring them up because kind of the myth is that Asians are generally doing well in higher education, and while that's surely true for a segment, there's another segment that has some of the lowest graduation rates, and so our grant really focuses on that. But those students are very similar to many of the students. 60% of our students at Cal State East Bay are transfer students. Most of them are first generation immigrants, low SES, and so to get that group of students graduated on time and career ready, as people have been talking about since that's the focus, it takes resources, and we don't feel like we have enough resources. Fortunately, this Department of Ed grant has us targeting getting students prepared so that they can go into the workforce or go on to careers in teaching and things like that. But this is a kind of outside the, if you will, the CSU funded grant program. And so my observation is we really have to address this issue of how do we fully fund the CSU and the UCs in higher education. If we can address that as a state, I think we will go a long way towards addressing some of the challenges that others have talked about increasing our graduation rates. I mean, it's going to take, obviously, this village, and we do a small piece of that, and thank you for your service, and thank all the other members of the legislature for your work, but we really have to kind of see this as an ongoing project, even after the committee finishes its hearings. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. And funding will be the topic of the 5th hearing that we'll have back in Sacramento middle of next year. I missed a page earlier, so now we have 10 more people who want to speak. Rock Fautenhauer from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. I hope I got close.
Great job.
All right.
Thank you. Rock Fautenhauer, I chair the Bay Area Community College Consortium, and I'm representing the Chancellor's Office today.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the California Community Colleges, I want to thank the committee for this exploration into the role of the master plan, ensuring that California is meeting our workforce needs. Our 114 colleges represent the largest system of higher education in the nation, serving more than 2.1 million students. Community college students represent 2/3 of California's undergraduate students and 1/10 of the nation's undergraduate population. Nearly 40% of the community college students are first in their family to go to college. We're the primary workforce provider in the state. Our colleges train 70% of the state's nurses, 80% of our firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and emergency medical technicians. Given the enormity and complexity of our system, we believe our performance has profound statewide and national implications. Chancellor Oakley recently issued a clear and urgent message calling for the community colleges to step up the pace of improvement to better serve students and to meet California's future workforce needs. Specifically, the vision for success calls for one, increasing by at least 20% annually the number of students earning an associate degree, credential, certificate, or a specific skill set. And two, increasing the number of students in career education programs who secure jobs in their field of study by 15%. In recent years, the legislature has taken important steps to support our efforts. The 2017-18 budget included a one-time allocation of $150 million to support the statewide implementation of the Guided Pathways Framework. This framework will help colleges to redesign academic and course-taking roadmaps for students seeking credentials, degrees, and transfer. The state budget also provided $200 million for 2016-17 and for 2016-17 or 17-18, $248 million. And this is for the Strong Workforce Program. This initiative aims to boost the number of skilled workers produced by the community college system. It will help fund colleges to expand and strengthen our CTE programs, increase faculty, improve curriculum, and increase regional coordination across colleges, businesses, and other groups. Both funding sources will help our colleges meet the 2022 deadline for completion of the vision goals. Thank you, Chairman Berman, for your efforts, and thank you for staying so long.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Next up, we have Yvette Shop from the Students for Quality Education.
Hi, sorry, I'm also holding my poster for outside later today. So I'm one of the students that, you know, is a little older, but I've also got caught in what I call the trap of the community colleges, simply because I went through the community college system, and not only was I constantly being told by the advisors there that I had another class, until I just went to my local CSU and said, what do I have left? And they're like, you could have transferred like a year ago. And then that being said, once I was finally ready to transfer, I was constantly being told, oh, there's a year hold on enrollment. Oh, we won't enroll this semester. So I think just having like a system in place where, you know, we are allowing these transfer students to have a easier pathway into the CSU system. Now being a CSU student and being on my final semester, I've really been able to see how my college has really been affected by the constant tuition hikes. I go to Stanislaus State in Turlock, and we started a food pantry it's about a year now, and we started with about 75 students a month. Today we're at over 200 students a month, and all we keep hearing is that we don't have enough to supply the food pantry. That being said, the food pantry is filled with only canned goods and nothing nutritious or healthy, and nothing is really being done to address that. So I think there's a lot of issues within the CSU system that also need to be addressed, as well as making a free higher education within the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Next up, we have Rigel Robinson from the UC Student Association.
Pronounced it correctly. Thank you so much.
All right.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rigel Robinson. Just drove down with a handful of other students from UC Berkeley here on behalf of the UC Student Association. We're disappointed that so little of the rest of the hearing committee could be here for public remarks, but we're honored and flattered that you're still hanging out with us. We're here to reinforce this idea of access. And while we know, there will be additional hearings on student needs and finances, et cetera, we want to reinforce the conversation about how integral student basic needs and conversations of access at our public universities are to how well California higher education can meet workforce needs. Because it seems like too often when we talk about access at the state level and within the state legislature, we're talking about access to enrollment, but not access to matriculation, and also the matriculation that students come into these universities hoping to receive. We see time and time again enrollment increases at our campuses without the necessary increases in funding to actually account for that, with many campuses far over capacity. So students come in hoping to major in one thing or another in highly impacted fields that our state needs, and then not actually being able to graduate with the diplomas and the degrees that they came for because of degree caps, because of increasing year by year GPA prerequisites for these degrees, not because of changing dynamics in the workforce, but because of the university's inability to hire more faculty to meet the increasing demand for these fields. We also see major repercussions of this within student basic needs security. I was heartbroken to hear the statistics our colleague from CSU East Bay recited about homelessness on his campus, which are deeply resonant with the same numbers on our campus. We did a recent survey last spring that indicated at UC Berkeley, about 10% of all students face homelessness for an extended period of time of up to a month or more during the time that they are students at UC Berkeley, which is not something that should be happening at any of our public universities across the state of higher education. The Silicon Valley wasn't built because there was a natural resource abundance of microchips in the area. It was built because we created a fertile crescent, if you will, a Tigris and Euphrates of public universities in the area. Remind you that Assemblymember Eggman's plan would create a $2.2 billion annual fund to essentially abolish tuition across the higher education sections of our state. And just this last summer, our state legislature passed a really important gas tax that would raise $5.2 billion annually for other needs. It's not a question of our capacity or ability to fund higher education better and give our students and our campuses the resources they need, but a question of our political will to do so. So as we move into the new budget cycle and the new legislative cycle, we really, really hope that you can give our students and our higher education institutions the attention that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Rigel. And I've got, in folks, I've got 4 of you. So there's Joanna Chen, Chris Yamas, and Varsha Sareshwar.
Yes.
And it looks like you're in that order.
All
So
right.
perfect. That worked out well.
Yay.
Joanna.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Chen. I'm a sophomore at UC Berkeley. I'm studying political economy, media studies, and rhetoric. And today we ask that with an increase in admission in UCs and community college and CSUs, that there also be an increase in funding that's adequate to the amount that we're increasing in admission, specifically $25 million for 2,500 additional slots. And I would like to draw your attention to a very specific example in STEM. So it's been clear that California's higher education system has not been idle. There's been a number of degree graduates in high demand fields such as computer science and STEM fields have doubled between 2010 and 2016. However, shortages persist and systemic challenges present themselves in preparing Californian students for careers in STEM and will certainly threaten California's role as a world leader in industries dependent on STEM talent. So, to give you some statistics, 58% of Silicon Valley's STEM workforce is foreign-born, and another 24% comes from other states. STEM degrees are growing slower in our state than any other state. It's 4.8% in California compared to 11.2% in New York. And in order to fix this problem, there must be an increase in admission in our colleges, and therefore a subsequent increase in our funding. At a time when California is competing with other tech regions for talent, this discrepancy is indicative of problems inherent within our higher education system and also our workforce. By increased enrollment in our schools, we must also increase funding adequately. We must also ensure that there be adequate positions in our workforce that are available to those who do graduate. And as we continue to innovate, we must also improve our ability to cultivate and utilize homegrown talent and collaborate on education's greatest challenge, which is preparing Californian students for the modern workforce. And this can only be done through an increase in admission and also increase funding adequately. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Chris Yamas.
Good afternoon. While I am a student at UC Berkeley, I transferred from a California community college. I was really pleased to hear the concerns voiced earlier regarding community college students and what we've been going through. Myself and a majority of my peers at community college weren't just preparing for the workforce, but were actively participating in it, having to work part-time or full-time jobs to afford the cost of living while we accumulated the credits that we needed. Too many of my peers stopped short of transferring because, ending up remaining in service jobs because they didn't see financing university education as a viable option for them or for their family. While my family has not been able to contribute toward financing my education, I'm immensely grateful to have had the BOG waiver at community college and federal and state funding at UC Berkeley, while also continuing to work part-time. Yet with looming education funding cuts on the federal level, it's even more important for our state budget decision makers to not simply see free higher education in California as an abstract ideal or dream, but as a realistic policy goal that we are entirely capable of reaching. While we should continue to prioritize support for low-income students in higher ed, we must also protect funding opportunities like the middle class scholarship from elimination. We must keep college attainable and affordable for students like us who have done our part and put in the work to prepare for higher education and our careers ahead. We hope that the state and the UC continue to prioritize the values of California's master plan as the work of this committee continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And Varsha, Sarveshwar.
Sarveshwar, yeah.
Sarveshwar.
So good afternoon, my name is Varsha, and I'm a second-year political science major at UC Berkeley. And many folks have talked about how we can't really address these workforce needs unless we address the fact that California over the last couple decades has really underinvested in public higher education. And there's a lot of conversations today about internships and the importance of, students getting experience in various professions before they enter the workforce. I'd like to make the point that most of those internships are unpaid. And it means that a student who wants to work a summer internship is either not working a full-time summer job or not having the time to work a part-time summer job. And so it means that the students who can best prepare for the workforce are the students who have the most means to not work a full-time job in their free time. And so students who are working over 20 hours a week during part-time jobs during the school year and are still barely able to pay for tuition, food, and rent cannot prepare for the workforce. And so, as we've emphasized today, we really need to consider that to prepare our students for the workforce, we need to address decades of disinvestment in public higher education. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. We've got four more folks. Thaddeus Banglo from SAU 521. B-A-N-G-L-E. Bangle?
Yes.
Thaddeus Bangle.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thaddeus.
Basically, I'm a parent, alumni from San Jose State. I went to Gavilan Junior College, San Francisco State before transferring here back in 1989 and graduating in 1992. I am basically kind of disappointed because I don't feel like the emphasis is on the students. I don't think we're addressing the fact that back when I was going to school here, when I transferred from San Francisco State, which was $300 tuition, and I transferred to San Jose State, it was $289. And they were building the Sioux Rec Arena. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. But the important thing was it was affordable. You could actually work your way through school without taking out loans. I wasn't that talented. There were talented students here, but that one wasn't me. I had to work part-time, live at home, and go to school. But we were able to obtain my degree, to get a job here without any student debt. The food here was good. You know, when I went to San Francisco State, actually I wasn't really too crazy because it was the Marriott, but it was quality of food. And I understand that the students are suffering. And that's one of Rokeach's needs is you have to have food, you have to have sleep. I know we have homeless teachers and students, and we had full-time faculty, or faculty that would be commuting from San Francisco State to San Jose State, you know, and working in human resource out in the private sector. I don't think that we're getting that. I think that our quality education is falling, and if you don't address the students, which should be the focus, it's not going to improve. You're still going to have a lack of people to be able to employ, quality people to employ. You have to take care of your students. Back in 1990, I believe it was 1991, the economy took a downturn. Now, I'm not happy about them laying off the painters at San Jose State, but it was at a focus of we are going to provide classes, because they had to cut a certain amount of classes too, but we're going to provide classes, and we're not going to raise tuition so that we can provide what we're supposed to be, which is higher education for the students here at San Jose State University and throughout the CSU at that time. I know it has completely gotten away from that. I know from the construction. I know just looking, you know, I went to I lived in Mary Park for a semester before coming back to San Jose State. It's a box, but it was a nice box. There was two of us to it, but it was simple. Okay, and it was paid for by my family, by generations of me before me that lived in California. Now it seems like we're repaying for a new system that has glass all the way from the top to the bottom at UC Santa Barbara. I mean, this is not needed. First of all, at Santa Barbara, you just need an overhang. It's beautiful weather. You know, this is overdone. I will finish up real quick. But if you do not get the tuition down, you do not get the quality of food up to be able to live for faculty and students, then we are going to fall short, and this is basically posturing, if you will.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have Beth Malinowski from the California Health and Advocates. And then we're going to have Amy Hines Shaika, and then Austin Webster.
Hi, thank you for staying and thank you for having this session today. You know, it's great listening to all the speakers and coming towards the end. I'll try to keep my comments short. I'm not up here as an education expert or as a current student, but providing another industry perspective. So again, I'm with the California Health Plus Advocates. It's the advocacy branch of the California Primary Care Association, statewide association representing federally qualified health centers and community clinics, serving every single county, roughly 58,000 employees, and caring for about 6.2 million patients. Really appreciated the specific focus of today and having employer panel up here. You know, a number of years ago, when our association leaders, our health centers, corporations started coming to us and saying, we need to address workforce, it was new for the association. And as we started peeling back the layers, and we're still actively doing that, we uncovered that really at the center of the concerns and challenges our employers are facing today are challenges in the educational system. And in particular, a number of things kind of rose to the top. So we saw, as a number of folks have spoken to today, that we have this challenge of both preparing the workforce that we need right now, right? So healthcare is constantly changing. So we have to make sure we're training the workforce we need today, while at the same time trying to imagine and prepare for the workforce of the future. And I know that's a near impossible task, but I think through closer collaboration, we can do that really well. And so for those today that spoke in particular about the need for a coordinating body to really drive the master plan and to create a better intersection, not only across a different segment of the educational system, but also bring the employers, especially healthcare employers, into it, I think it play a really substantial role. As an association, for the past couple of years, we've been trying to tackle creating individual relationships with our CSU and UC and community college partners. And that's terrific, but trying to do it together would make things a lot easier, and I think would go a lot further. I also just want to acknowledge and provide maybe some feedback, additional perspective on some of the student comments in the past hour. You know,
briefly, if you
yes,
could.
sure, of course.
Thank you.
We started doing actually focus groups with students who care about healthcare. And every one of those students said the same things the students said today. Our ability to see the light in the tunnel to become a healthcare professional comes down to our student debt burden, comes down to our ability to get transfer between our schools, ability to get the classes we need, address enrollment challenges. So I just wanted to highlight that even from an employer perspective, we're hearing that too. So again, anything we can do to be assistance to your office and to this effort, we're happy to be, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth. I very much appreciate that. Next up, I have Amy Hines, and Amy, help me with the last part of the Hines.
Shaik.
Shaik, thank you.
Hi.
From Reclaim California Higher Education Coalition.
Correct. Chair Berman and Ellen, hi. Thank you very much for staying to hear our comments. My name is Amy Hines-Shaik. I'm the Higher Education Director for the Reclaim CA Higher Education Coalition. We are a coalition of over 20 organizations, students, staff, faculty, and community members over the 3 segments of public higher education in the state of California, the community colleges, the CSUs, and the UCs. Our most valued partners are the students, so the SSCCC makes up 2.2 million of our members, and the UCSA, who our partners were just here, they represent about 240,000, and we represent in total about 3 million Californians from the tips to the tail of California. And we're all in a mission trying to get back to the master plan for higher education in the state of California. We've been in existence since October 31st of 2014, and we just recently put out a position paper called the $48 Fix, which is how to make tuition and fees completely free in the state of California. And we are about to re-release it with new franchise tax board numbers. Almost all of our partners have individually met with you or your office, and so we're, as a coalition, hopefully going to be able to do that soon or very shortly. And so I basically wanted to use this kind of, since I'm one of the last 2 speakers, just to say all of this is tied to affordability, and affordability is just one of 3 pegs of the stool. So it's affordability, accessibility, and quality, and our plan would do all 3 of these, and I hope to talk to you more about that in the future. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Amy. And last up, we have Austin Webster from the Faculty Association California Community Colleges.
Thank you, Chair Berman, and in the interest of time, I'll be brief. Austin Webster on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges and the California Community Colleges Association for Occupational Education. I would echo a lot of the comments that have been made by the students and the faculty groups here today. Wanted to quickly go over two things here, and that's that there's been a lot of emphasis on the community colleges throughout this whole workforce conversation. And we are definitely happy to be a part of that conversation, but would like to remind folks that as we move forward, we should really continue to strive to provide additional resources to the colleges so that we eventually get to the same level as our sister segments. And that's both for the students within our system and for the institutions themselves. Workforce education continues to be a very strong focus within the colleges, but we would just ask that everybody is mindful that there's a very volatile funding source both within the state and the federal level when it comes to CTE, and that we keep that in mind as we continue to increase expectations. So again, we thank you for holding this hearing as well as the series, and we look forward to being a continued part of the conversation.
Thank you, Austin. I really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody, everyone who came, my colleagues who attended earlier, and everyone who stayed till the very end, only 47 minutes longer than we planned. I also really want to thank San Jose State University, President Papazian, and the team, the staff that have been helping out behind the scenes, making sure that everything's operating and everybody can participate both in person and online. Really appreciate y'all's help. And the public in the audience and those watching online. Our third hearing will be in 2018, probably in February. Please stay tuned. If you haven't given us your information, do that so that we can keep you up to date on what's going on and when the next hearings will be and what the focuses will be. Or you can also visit we have a